Chapter 243. It had to be said that Yun Jian's acting skills were superb. As a secret agent in her previous life, she had been specially trained. Not only did secret agents need the ability to kill in one move, but more importantly, they needed to know how to blend into the crowd and in the other party's life in one move when their guard was down and they were suspicious. Obviously, this was Yun Jian's forte, and now she was planning to blend in here. Perhaps it was because Yun Jian's accent was exactly the same as the locals in Country X's H province, coupled with her pitiful appearance and her tattered clothes. Also, Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei were thin and weak to begin with. They really looked like they had been starving for a long time and came from poor families. Therefore, the tall man's heart softened. He and the short man discussed for a while and let Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei enter. Jiang Weiwei only realized after entering the door that Yun Jian's acting skills were superb. Moreover, they would not be suspected if they entered the door like this. Yun Jian only curled her lips slightly. She and Jiang Weiwei entered the door, turned the corner, and left the sight of the two men at the door. Then, they walked straight to a nearby washroom. Fortunately, there was no one in the corridor. Yun Jian quickly entered the washroom with Jiang Weiwei. Yun Jian washed the mud off her face quickly and tied her hair tie again. Jiang Weiwei followed suit. Yun Jian tidied up her clothes and tried to wipe the mud off her clothes with water. Then, she rearranged her clothes. At this moment, Yun Jian seemed to have changed into a different person. It was as if the pitiful little girl, just now, was just an illusion. The torn hem of the dress looked fashionable on Yun Jian in an instant. Even if there were some holes, they still had a natural beauty. Jiang Weiwei was dumbfounded. She could do this? However, she saw that Yun Jian had already walked to the casino on the second floor. Jiang Weiwei quickly patted the mud off her body and followed her. On the second floor of the casino, groups of gamblers were crowding around the gambling tables, shouting and yelling. The atmosphere was extremely majestic. No one noticed the arrival of Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei at all. Of course, it was not like no one noticed Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei. Yun Jian's looks were simply too outstanding. Even without any makeup, her skin still looked shiny and as delicate as a newborn baby's. "Hey, beautiful, are you alone?" A handsome man with short hair walked over and struck up a conversation with Yun Jian. "No, I'm with my friend." Yun Jian smiled generously and pointed at Jiang Weiwei. She was still thinking about how to blend in without leaving a trace, but she didn't expect someone to strike up a conversation with her. This was just as well. The man looked at Yun Jian awkwardly. He was a little sorry that he didn't see Jiang Weiwei just now. Then he reached out his hand and introduced himself to Yun Jian. "My name is Miran. You can call me Shaoli." "She's Xiao Shui." Yun Jian didn't reach out to shake his hand. Instead, she made up a name. When she lied, she introduced herself to Miran without blushing or skipping a beat. "Oh, nice to meet you." Miran didn't embarrassingly return his hand. He bent 45 degrees to the side and bowed to Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei like a gentleman to show his friendliness. "So, what game do you two beauties want to play at the casino?" After Miran finished speaking, he sized up Yun Jian again, his eyes filled with indescribable nakedness. As expected, he wasn't a good person. However, Yun Jian pretended not to notice anything. She blinked and asked innocently, "What game?" Miran was one of the people in charge of the casino. When he heard Yun Jian's words, he became even more excited. His gaze seemed to be able to see through Yun Jian. However, in his heart, he thought, it's been a long time since he played with such a pure student. Chapter 244. Can I make any conditions if I win? Yun Jian blinked. Her innocent smile made Miran's heart itch. Jiang Weiwei stood by the side without saying a word. At this moment, she also knew that if she were to face such a scene, she would probably be exposed as soon as she spoke. And Yun Jian was actually able to disguise herself to this extent. Even Jiang Weiwei, who didn't have a good impression of Yun Jian at the beginning, had to admit that even if she were to believe that Yun Jian was an agent of a country trained by a special agent unit, she would believe it. Therefore, Jiang Weiwei didn't say anything. Their mission was to seize that batch of firearms. Right now, they were still on a mission, and Jiang Weiwei was with Yunjian. Therefore, no matter how much she hated Yunjian, she wouldn't trip her up. At this juncture, if Yunjian was really exposed, Jiang Weiwei intended to help her. Of course I'm a man. I never lie. Miran patted his chest and promised. He softened his voice and continued to seduce Yunjian. Especially a cute girl like you. How could I bear to lie to you? These rather ambiguous words made Yunjian roll her eyes in her heart. Even Jiang Weiwei felt that Miran was disgusting. However, neither of them showed their emotions on their faces. But I don't know how to play this. What should I do? Yunjian glanced at the gambling crowd and said. Miran was confused by Yunjian. He really thought that Yunjian had never gambled before. This was what he meant. Miran chuckled and tried even harder to trick Yunjian. It's okay, I'll teach you. Besides, if you lose, I won't ask for anything too excessive. Of course, it wasn't an excessive request. Miran had already made a plan in his heart. He wanted Yunjian to lose. Then he would lure her step by step and trick her into bed. This was his real goal. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to charm such an innocent student. Of course, if Myra knew that Yunjian was not only the #1 secret agent, slaying God, in her previous life, but she had never met a match in the gambling circle. She was the lady gambler who was respectfully called the god of gamblers in this circle. Yet she pretended to be a student who did not know how to gamble in front of him. Myron would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. Yunjian was indeed known as the goddess of gamblers in her previous life. Back then, Yunjian had gambled wildly for an entire night at the internationally renowned Feng Yun Casino. She had won a whole month's worth of profits from the Feng Yun Casino, a total of $1 billion USD. In the end, Feng Yun Casino had no choice but to beg her, the great Buddha, to leave. Okay. Yunjian pretended to be in a difficult position and nodded. Seeing that Yunjian had agreed, Miran became even more excited. At the same time, from Yunjian's expression, he was even more convinced that Yunjian was gambling for the first time. In that case, was there any suspense to the outcome of this gamble? Of course he would win. Come. Let's play over there. Miran led Yunjian to a gambling table. He kicked away the gamblers who were still around the table and politely invited Yunjian to take a seat. Since it's your first time playing, little sister Shaoli, let's play a round of dice. As Miran spoke, he picked up 3 dice and placed them in front of Yunjian. At the same time, he covered the 3 dice with a bowl. Chapter 245. Even the way he addressed Yunjian began to become a little ambiguous. It could be seen that Miran was probably an expert in coaxing little girls. Yunjian smiled contemptuously, but the expression she showed in front of Miran was an innocent and cute little face. At this moment, even Jiang Weiwei couldn't help but twitch in her heart. Fortunately, Miran didn't notice her. Otherwise, with her performance, she would have been seen through long ago. Just shake the bowl like this. Yunjian continued to act like a novice who didn't know anything. Yes, the 3 dice are in the bowl. Shake it however you want, and then we'll guess the size of the dice. Miran narrowed his eyes. He really thought that Yunjian didn't know how to play, so he patiently explained. The dice had 6 faces, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points on each of the 6 faces. The 3 dice were shaken under the lid of the bowl. After shaking the bowl, they opened the bowl to see the size of the 3 dice. The gamblers would announce the size of the dice before the dice began to roll. This was a form of gambling in the gambling arena, gambling dice. Mi Luan explained to Yunjian patiently, glancing at her from the corner of his eyes as he asked with a mischievous smirk, Shaoli, do you get it now that I've explained it this way? Understood. Yunjian pretended to be enlightened and nodded at Miran. Then let's begin. Miran narrowed his eyes and spoke in a wretched tone. Little sister Shaoli, do you want to bet big or small? I bet big. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Since Miran wanted to give her a round, why should she reject his good intentions? Bet big? Little sister Shaoli, are you sure? If you bet big, you will lose. Are you sure you want to bet big? Miran said loudly. At the same time, she glanced to the side and said to Yunjian, I'm sure. Yunjian also narrowed her eyes. At the same time, she reached out and covered the bowl with the 3 dice. Mirren had done something. In fact, Mirren had installed a regulator inside the bowl. The 3 dice were covered in the bowl, and the size of the dice could be controlled. In other words, if Yun Jin bet big, the die in the bowl would become small. If Yun Jin bet small, the die in the bowl would become big. No matter what, she couldn't win. And the person who controlled the regulator in the bowl was nearby. Coincidentally, Yun Jin caught Mi Luan's glance just now. Following Mirren's gaze, she saw a man holding a square remote control beside an inconspicuous washroom in the distance. The man was holding a remote control that could adjust the size of the dice in the bowl in front of her. Mirren had just asked Yun Jin loudly if she was betting big. She was probably conveying to the man holding the remote control in the distance that she, Yun Jin, was going to bet big. Therefore, she asked the man to control the dice in the bowl to be small. The casino was messy, and there were all kinds of people, but the people who opened the casino would definitely ensure their profits. Therefore, many casinos would cheat to win. Mirren probably wanted to use this move to defeat her, but she didn't expect to be seen through by Yun Jin. Little sister Shaoli starts shaking. Mirren made a gesture of invitation and said to Yun Jin, "Wait." Yun Jin suddenly shouted to stop. She revealed an embarrassed expression and pretended to be embarrassed. "I'm in a hurry. I want to go to the toilet before I come back." All right. Little sister Shaoli, you can go. There's no rush, haha." Mirren didn't notice anything different. He spoke generously. Chapter 246. Yun Jin got up and gave Jiang Weiwei a subtle look before walking towards the washroom. Although Jiang Weiwei was surprised, she wasn't a fool. Other than her competitive nature, she was also very smart. She was considered a powerful character among the candidates for the Special Forces. These were all true. Jiang Weiwei quickly understood, but she didn't show any other expression as she was facing Mirren. Yun Jin walked past Jiang Weiwei without a trace and headed towards the washroom. After a while, she walked out of the washroom again. It was as if nothing had happened. However, at this moment, the remote control in the hands of the man standing next to the washroom suddenly failed. No one noticed that the moment Yun Jin walked over, the remote control in the man's hands was instantly scrapped. Yun Jin returned to the opposite side of Mirren and sat down. She shook her wet little hands that had just been washed. Her fair and clean little face looked lovely and lovely. Mirren swallowed his saliva. The desire in his body was boiling. "Little sister Shaoli, can we begin?" Mirren couldn't help but urge. "Okay." Yun Jin took out a tissue and wiped her tender little hands like a little girl. She smiled at Mirren. Then, she reached out and touched the bowl. The 3 dice in the bowl were like a few small balls, making ping, 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 ping sounds in the bowl. Yun Jin shook her hands twice and stopped. She smiled at Mirren, only to see that he couldn't wait to lift the lid of the bowl. He couldn't wait to see Yun Jin lose to him. At the same time, he could logically make his not excessive request. Thinking up to here, Mirren's mouth was still speaking with a hint of an evil smile. "Little sister Shaoli, actually, there's a trick to playing this kind of dice. However, this is your first time playing, so even if you lose, it's normal." I can understand, after the last word fell, Mirren had already opened the bowl with a smile. The 3 dice in the bowl also appeared in front of everyone's eyes. 5, 5, 6. Big. It was actually big. Did this mean that Yun Jin had won? Mirren stayed in the act of lifting the bowl for a long time, stunned. "I won. Shouldn't you agree to my request and let me make a condition?" Yun Jin blinked. She smiled shyly and continued. "You promised me." Jiang Weiwei was dumbfounded. She looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. Who would have thought that Yun Jin would actually win? She even gambled. Mirren's face instantly darkened, and his face darkened. No one knew what this represented. He had installed a regulator in the bowl, so it was impossible for him to lose. The only possibility was, could it be this little sister Shaoli in front of him? She had seen through it long ago. Mirren was not stupid. He was able to sit in the position of one of the people in charge of the Flying Sky Gang Casino. Not only did he rely on brute force, but more importantly, he had to have a brain. He suddenly remembered Yun Jin's action of going to the washroom just now. Mirren's expression did not change. He stood up fiercely and slammed the table. Then, he glared at Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei. His expression suddenly changed. He flipped the gambling table over and shouted in all directions, "Arrest the two of them!" Seeing Miran's sudden change in expression, Yun Jian was not in a hurry. She had just been testing Miran. If Miran was stupid, then she would naturally be able to find out about the firearms. Unfortunately, Miran was not stupid. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She watched as the gamblers around the casino ran away in fear. A group of people with guns rushed out from the back of the casino. Her expression did not change. Jiang Weiwei's face turned pale. The underworld here was not like the underworld in Country Z. Chapter 247. A group of Flying Sky Gang brothers with pistols surrounded Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei with Miran as the center. One by one, they pointed their pistols at Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei. Even Jiang Weiwei, who came from a military family and swore not to be afraid of sacrifice since she was young, couldn't help but shiver in the face of these pistols. Miran, who was standing at the front, stopped pretending. He smiled at Yun Jian and snorted, "My little sister Shaoli, stop pretending. Heh, I originally wanted to play with you because you were beautiful, but since you came with ill intentions, don't blame us for being impolite." Miran had already listened to the teachings of the Flying Sky Gang's boss. Before the recent arms trade between the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang, anyone who was suspicious had to be cautious when coming into contact with them. That was why when Miran realized that something was wrong, he didn't say anything. He waited until he was sure before making a move. It turned out that Miran was already on guard. Yun Jian's lips curled slightly. Jiang Weiwei stood back to back with Yun Jian. Compared to Yun Jian, Jiang Weiwei never thought that they would be exposed. This seemingly obsessed Miran was actually not as simple as she seemed on the surface. As expected, it was not easy to deceive. But the most despicable thing was that they only had knives in their hands, while the other party had so many people, and everyone was holding pistols. Jiang Weiwei finally knew why Ge Yunjian's tone was heavy when he asked them to complete the mission. However, she, Jiang Weiwei, was also a person who could bend and stretch. She never regretted the choice she had made. At critical moments, she would still throw all personal grudges to the back of her mind. Jiang Weiwei leaned against Yun Jian's back and asked Yun Jian in a low voice, "What should we do?" "Listen to my instructions." Yun Jian also replied to her in a low voice. The interaction between Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei was not seen by Miran and the others. Miran, on the other hand, laughed heartily. One of Miran's subordinates suggested, "Lord Miran, these two women are probably undercover police agents, right?" Humph, humph. You don't even look at yourself. How dare you behave atrociously in our Flying Sky Gang? Why don't we teach them a lesson? We'll F***CK them right here, so that we can have some fun too. What do you think? Ha ha. This was a casino, surrounded by gamblers who did not dare to escape. The dirty words of Miran's subordinate made a group of Miran's other brothers feel restless. Making love with these two women in public, it was probably going to be a different experience. You dare? Aren't you afraid that our people will avenge us? Although Jiang Weiwei was a woman who knew when to bow and submit, she would rather commit suicide than be humiliated to death. Thus, she clenched her teeth and said hatefully. Before Miran could speak, his subordinates began to mock Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei on his behalf. Why wouldn't I dare? TSK, do you really think our Flying Sky Gang is an ordinary gang? Do you think I'm afraid of your people? Miran's subordinate continued to brag, and then he exaggeratedly used an example to show off the power of his Flying Sky Gang. Do you know Slaying God, the top secret agent on the International Secret Agent ranking? Look at how young you two are. I'm sure you don't know. Let me tell you, even the younger brother of Slaying God, who was known as the strongest secret agent in the secret agent world, was arrested, and Slaying God went missing because of this incident. Our Flying Sky Gang was involved. Don't you think our Flying Sky Gang is powerful? Even a big shot like that was fooled by us. The more this person boasted, the more enthusiastic he became. He looked as if he was afraid that others would not know that he was from the Flying Sky Gang. However, This person did not know the actual facts. He only heard that slaying God went missing because of this incident, and the Flying Sky Gang was also involved in the incident, so he could not help but exaggerate a little. What no one expected, however, was that Yun Jian's face darkened when she heard the man's words. Chapter 248. Jiang Weiwei stood close to Yun Jian's back. She could feel Yun Jian's body trembling when she heard Miran's subordinates boast. Outsiders did not know that the one thing that Yun Jian regretted the most in her previous life was not looking after her younger brother well. She swore that she would investigate her younger brother's death. It was not that she did not investigate after her rebirth. However, it was as if the incident had been purposely erased. She had been investigating for so long, but to no avail. Today, she heard about it from a subordinate of the Flying Apsara Gang. The Flying Apsara Gang was involved in her younger brother's death. Yun Jian was thoroughly enraged. What did I say? Uft. Don't you understand what I'm saying, little girl? Haha. I'm saying that the Flying Apsara Gang was involved in the murder of the younger brother of the International #1 agent, slaying God. That kind of character is not something that you and I can imagine. Why? Isn't this enough to show how strong the Flying Apsara Gang is? The last word strong was stuck in his throat. Before Miran's subordinate could finish a string of words, he fell to the ground with a puff and died with a kick of his legs. Everyone was shocked by the turn of events. There was a blade stuck in the neck of the dead man, who suddenly fell to the ground. The blade was 3 inches into the neck, and the force was enough to kill someone on the spot. For someone to be able to exert such strength, other than an assassin, it would be a special agent. The group looked in the direction where the flying dagger came from, and saw Yun Jian playing with the flying dagger that came out of nowhere. Murder. Her blade can kill people. At that moment, a gambler lost control and exclaimed. There was a hint of horror in his words and his fear of Yun Jian. Miran and the rest were scared out of their wits by Yun Jian's action. No one saw how Yun Jian attacked earlier, but she had already killed someone. Kill her. Shoot them. Miran pointed at Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei and yelled at his subordinates. At this moment, how could Miran still want to play with Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei? She was someone who could kill someone right in front of everyone's eyes without letting anyone see how she did it. How terrifying was it? However, before Miran could react, Yun Jian had already moved. Her figure quickly shuttled between Miran's group of men who were still loading their guns. Wherever Yun Jian passed, people would fall to the ground and die. Until later, Miran's subordinates all died miserably. All of them had one thing in common. Their throats had been slit. Yun Jian held the butterfly knife that she had taken out from her waist at some unknown time. A drop of blood dripped from the tip of the knife as she walked towards Miran. So what if you have guns? You guys who don't know how to use guns are still a bunch of trash. Yun Jian shouted. At the same time, under the horrified gazes of the group of gamblers, Jiang Weiwei and Miran, she stepped on a pistol that had fallen to the ground closest to her. With a stomp, the gun flew off the ground and was firmly grasped by Yun Jian. Let me teach you how to use a gun. Yun Jian looked at Miran and said faintly. Then, she pulled the wrench and pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet flew into Miran's thigh. Miran screamed and fell to her knees uncontrollably. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want the time and address of my Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang? I'll tell you everything, as long as you let me go. Miran endured the pain and said hurriedly. Yun Jian sneered and revealed a strange smile. Too late. I've changed my mind. Your Flying Sky Gang will become a member of history. After that, the sound of a bullet piercing through flesh was heard. Miran's eyes widened as she fell back. Jiang Weiwei looked at the scene in front of her and was stunned on the spot. She did not expect Yun Jian to be so powerful. They were facing a group of armed underworld forces. She even killed all of them. More importantly, Jiang Weiwei considered one thing. Yun Jian's expression changed when Miran's subordinates mentioned slaying God, the top secret agent ranking. Yun Jian's current codename was Slaying God. Slaying God and Slaying God were pronounced the same. Chapter 249. Although that was what Jiang Weiwei thought, she quickly tossed the thought to the back of her mind. Even if Yun Jian was related to the agent, slaying God, now was not the time to think about it. Yun Jian had gone on a killing spree here. She had killed so many people from the Flying Sky Gang, so there was no way the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang would not let this slide. In that case, they would not be able to avoid arousing suspicion during the mission. Their original goal was to find out the time and address of the arms deal between the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang. Then, when the two gangs started the deal, everyone would work together to seize the arms. However, now that they had alerted the enemy, the Flying Sky Gang and the Iron Lock Gang would probably change the time and address of the deal. They might even send people to be more vigilant against them. Jiang Weiwei did not deny Yun Jian's skills and what she had done just now. When she saw Yun Jian's ability, she even had the urge to cheer and applaud loudly. It was a fact that Jiang Weiwei looked down on the weak. However, she respected the strong. When she saw Yun Jian's decisive killing earlier, her dissatisfaction and disgust toward Yun Jian had been replaced by admiration and respect. Should we retreat first? Jiang Weiwei turned to ask Yun Jian. Now that their whereabouts had been exposed, they could only retreat first and reconvene with Lu Shiyun and the rest to discuss the plan. Yun Jian merely narrowed her eyes and did not answer. Since she already knew about her brother's death and that the Flying Sky Gang had been involved, there was no way she would leave just like that. She wanted the Flying Sky Gang to pay the price in blood. Of course, at the same time, she had something important to ask the Flying Sky Gang. She had been looking for the organization behind the Wolverine Gang that had abducted her brother. However, there had been no results. She could not rest until she avenged her brother's death. Not only was she going to destroy the Flying Sky Gang today, but she was also going to find out the identity of the organization behind them. Go and meet up with them first. Yun Jian put away the butterfly knife and turned to walk toward the stairs. Jiang Weiwei was stunned for a moment. Then, her body involuntarily followed Yun Jian's instructions and reported the situation to Lu Shiyun and the others. It was only after Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei left that the gamblers dashed outside in a panic like they were fleeing. At this moment, in the conference room on the 5th floor of the building, the Flying Sky Gang didn't just have its own black faction building. It also had a meeting room where the elders and the upper echelons of the gang held meetings. At this moment, a bald man, who was sitting at the highest position in the conference room, was solemnly looking at the group of senior members of the Flying Sky Gang. This bald man had thick eyebrows and small eyes. He looked a little shifty-eyed. Although he looked like a street thug, the bald man was actually the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick. Nick's solemn expression made the group of elders and high-ranking members of the Flying Sky Gang feel respect for him. This batch of firearms in our hands has attracted the attention of the police from various countries. Therefore, in the next few days, we must remain vigilant until our deal with the Iron Lock Gang is successful. Nick slammed the table and said with a serious frown. However, before he could finish, the door in front of him was kicked open. A young girl with long hair burst through the door. Then, a bright throwing knife flew over the heads of all the high-ranking members and stabbed into Nick's table. Chapter 250. The people in the conference room on the 5th floor didn't notice anything that happened in the casino on the 2nd floor. It had to be said that as the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick had installed thick soundproof walls around the conference room. No matter how loud the commotion on the 2nd floor was, he couldn't hear anything in the conference room on the 5th floor. So just now, Yun Jian killed Miran and the others and caused a big commotion, but Nick and the others were still having a meeting. Therefore, when Yun Jian barged in and stabbed a flying dagger into the table in front of Nick while spouting her insolent words, everyone was terrified. Although Nick was frightened by Yun Jian's throwing knife, he was still someone who had seen a big scene. When he saw Yun Jian's appearance and age, he slammed the table and stood up for his prestige. He retorted to Yun Jian, "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Flying Sky Gang's conference room and spout nonsense about taking the lives of my Flying Sky Gang's higher-ups? Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Young and frivolous, you can't do anything good. Today, "You dare to offend my Flying Sky Gang, so you must pay the price." As the boss of the Flying Sky Gang, Nick saw that the person who came was a young girl in her teens. In addition, he was in front of his subordinates, so he had to put on a good show. That was why he slammed the table and stood up, shouting at Yunjian. Hee. Facing Nick, Yunjian didn't have the slightest fear, nor did she bother to retaliate with words. She looked at Nick, and the scene of her brother's head being thrown at her by Lang Sha in her previous life flashed before her eyes. Her brother was still so young, but he had become a stepping stone for these people. He didn't even have a complete corpse when he died. In all of this, the Flying Sky Gang led by Nick was also involved. Her cruel eyes flashed, and then she swung her hand, shooting blades in all directions. Several of the higher-ups closest to Yunjian were instantly obliterated. This little girl really killed people. It wasn't a joke. The rest of the people, including Nick, were stunned. It was especially so for Nick, who had only just recalled that Yunjian had flung the blade on the table in front of him in the beginning. Nick was so scared that he rolled off the podium. No. Let's talk this out. Nick was scared silly when he saw that Yunjian had taken the lives of several higher-ups. Even if he was a fool, he could tell that Yunjian was skilled, so he quickly begged for mercy. "Little girl, I didn't recognize Mount Tai just now and offended you. Please don't hold it against me." Nick's attitude changed too quickly. At the same time, he revealed a strange yet friendly smile and looked at Yunjian. "Little sister, our Flying Sky Gang has no enmity with you. Why are you making things difficult for us?" "Right. How about this? You can leave. We promise not to pursue this matter, okay?" Yunjian narrowed her eyes at Nick's words. "No enmity?" Yunjian repeated Nick's words through gritted teeth. "Do you know Slaying God, the #1 in the international secret agent ranking?" Yunjian raised her brow and looked at Nick and the rest with a chuckle. Nick's eyelids twitched, but he managed to react in time. He gulped and asked, Why? Answer me." Yunjian swung her arm, and another flying knife pierced the neck of a higher-up. Another life was lost. The group of higher-ups had retreated to a corner. Everyone was trembling, afraid that they would be the next to die. This little girl was too scary. She took a life with just one move. "I know, of course." Nick gulped, hastily replying, afraid that Yunjian would kill the higher-ups in his gang again. He had a bad feeling about this. Yunjian chuckled and looked at the group of people as if she was looking at dead people. She said without holding back, "Since you know Slaying God, the #1 on the secret agent ranking, I'm sure you're familiar with the incident where Slaying God's brother was used as a hostage to threaten her, right?" I forgot that Flying Sky Gang was involved in this as well." "Then I think we're considered to have a blood feud now." As Yunjian spoke, she clasped her hands together, and a cracking sound was heard from her knuckles. She was trying to hide her words. However, everyone present could tell what she was trying to say. Could this little girl in front of them be the famous #1 on the secret agent ranking, the most powerful secret agent king, Slaying God? After Nick heard Yunjian's words, he fell to the ground in shock. Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, the most powerful Kosha mercenaries boss. Chapter 251. What? Sword Club's higher-ups immediately understood what Yunjian meant. They stared at the long-haired girl standing in the middle with their mouths agape. Slaying God, the #1 secret agent in the international ranking, was her. In spite of it, Yunjian's skill with the flying dagger that slit their throats with a single stroke just now made everyone present believe it was unrealistic. If Yunjian was not the internationally renowned king of secret agents, Slaying God, how could she possess such dexterity? In an instant, everyone's faces changed beyond recognition. Everyone's hearts were subverted by an emotion called fear. However, no one was more fearful than Nick. Nick was the one who led Sword Club's higher-ups to kidnap Slaying God's brother and use him to threaten her. However, Nick was the mastermind. Slaying God was here now. She was here for revenge. Who was her match when she was so ruthless? Looking at the group of people who went from shock to bewilderment to fear, Yunjian merely curled her lips into a half-chuckle. However, Nick no longer had the guts to look at Yunjian when he heard her smile. Who did not know slaying God's ability? Slaying God was the only secret agent who had left in Han group. At the same time, she was a demon-like existence. After slaying God left in Han group, she went on missions like a maniac. Within 2 years, news spread that she had killed the previous boss of Kosha mercenaries, who was on par with an Han group. She was invincible as she took control of the Kosha mercenaries. Nick looked at Yun Jian in fear. His legs gave out when he heard Yun Jian's soft exclamation. He quickly got up and crawled toward Yun Jian on his knees. No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I didn't want to be involved in that incident. We were forced to do it. Please let us go. Nick knelt in front of Yun Jian with trembling legs. The man who was so bold and prideful earlier was now as cowardly as a piece of trash. This was the way of the world. In this world, the strong were respected. If you were weak, you must bow down to the strong. Nick was no exception. One must know that slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, was a king who had climbed out of a pile of dead bodies. The way the Han organization trained their assassins and agents was brutal. Hundreds and thousands of children were captured and trained by the organization. In the end, only 3 survived. Slaying God was the most powerful of the 3 survivors. From this, it could be seen that the reason why Nick knelt before Yun Jian on the spot after knowing what had happened was not because he was weak. He knew very well that if slaying God wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing an ant. Oh, you didn't volunteer to participate? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and continued, It's fine if I don't kill you. As long as you tell me which organization forced you to join, I can let you go. Hearing Yun Jian's words, Nick immediately recalled. He was really afraid that Yun Jian would go back on her words and kill them. So he immediately said, It's the people from the Inferno Ring. The Inferno Ring was the 3rd largest assassin organization after the Han organization and the Kosha mercenaries. The Inferno Ring. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and hummed softly. A murderous intent flashed in her eyes as she lowered her head to look at Nick, who was kneeling before her. Then you can go to hell. You said you wouldn't kill me. Nick's eyes widened as he stepped back in fear. He did not expect Yun Jian to go back on her words. I did say that I'll let you go as long as you tell me which organization forced you to join. But didn't anyone tell you that you must die after knowing my identity? Yun Jian chuckled, her eyes bloodshot. Then, Yun Jian flipped her palm and the butterfly knife nimbly appeared in her palm. The killing began. Chapter 252. Yun Jian's eyes were bloodshot. She knew that these people were the ones who had caused her brother's tragic death, so she wanted to die a quick death. She, slaying God, had always been protective. Her brother's death had always been a knot in her heart. Therefore, the higher-ups of the Flying Sky gang who had participated in her brother's matter must pay the price for their actions. In the hotel, Lu Shiyun and the rest were shocked when they heard what Jiang Weiwei, who had returned first, said. Jiang Weiwei told them about how they had exposed their whereabouts, including how Yun Jian had killed Mi Luan and the rest. After the shock, Lu Shiyun, as the captain, was naturally the calmest. He frowned and said to everyone, Since our whereabouts have been exposed, we must take other measures to seize that batch of firearms. No need. Just then, the door outside the room opened and Yun Jian walked in. Yun Jian, little girl, where have you been? Why are you only back now? I was shocked when I saw that only Jiang Weiwei had returned. I was afraid that something had happened to you. Chu Ning was relieved when she saw Yun Jian return. Jiang Weiwei did not explain why Yun Jian did not return with her. Yun Jian winked at Chu Ning discreetly, then looked at the rest and continued, I've found that batch of firearms. We can go get it now. Naturally, Lu Shiyun and his men did not know that Yun Jian had already wiped out the Go-Go gang's higher-ups, including their boss. The usually quiet vice captain, Hong Fan, could not help but ask Yun Jian, Are we going to get it now? There are thousands of people in the Flying Sky gang, not to mention that their boss is no pushover. Even our commander, Gu Junjian, won't attack the Flying Sky gang easily. Are we going to get it now? Are you sure it'll work? Idiot Hong, since little sister Yun Jian said that we can go get it, of course, there's a reason for it. Chu Xiangnan, who was standing next to Hong Fan, spoke up for Yun Jian and even nudged Hong Fan with his elbow. Hong Fan was the most meticulous person in the group. At the same time, he loved to study and was very knowledgeable about technological products. However, he was a man of few words. Therefore, Chu Xiangnan gave him a nickname, Idiot Hong. Hong Fan glared at Chu Xiangnan. He pretended not to hear how Chu Xiangnan addressed him and turned to look at Yun Jian. Hong Fan didn't have any other meaning. He was just used to deducing facts. He believed that it was impossible for the few of them to directly go to the Flying Heavens faction's territory to retrieve the firearms. Yun Jian lowered her eyes and said calmly, "The Flying Sky Gang's leader, Nick, and 18 other high-ranking members are dead. The remaining members of the Flying Sky Gang are no longer a threat, so we can go retrieve the firearms and report back to our country." What? The boss of the Flying Sky Gang is dead. All dead. A series of exclamations rang out. Everyone looked at Yun Jian in shock. The death of the gang's boss and the upper echelons meant that the gang had completely collapsed. Even if there were still people to replace them in the later stages, that was only the later stages. At least for now, it was absolutely easy for them to steal the firearms. Oh my God, they had just arrived for the mission. They hadn't even been here for half a day. And the result? The mission was almost completed. Even the official Advanced Special Forces soldiers had a hard time carrying out this mission, but they completed it in less than a day. Was this a dream? Just then, Lu Shiyun fell silent for a moment. He realized something and suddenly asked Yun Jian, the boss and high-ranking members of the Flying Sky Gang, "Were you the one who killed them?" There was a hint of shock in his voice. Chapter 253. Only God knew how shocked they were when Yun Jian nodded. Yun Jian was the latest to join the team and was also the youngest. In the cross-country run earlier, she might have gotten first place because of her developed motor nerves and good stamina. However, at this point, there was no longer anyone who did not believe it. When Jiang Weiwei came back, she told them in detail about how Yun Jian had killed Mi Luan and the rest. Now that Yun Jian had killed the Go-Go Gang's senior members, including the gang's boss, Nick, they would not doubt it. They were in disbelief, shock and fear. How terrifying was Yun Jian's skill to be able to do that? Let's steal the firearms while the Go-Go Gang is in chaos. You guys know how to drive, right? I've checked it out just now. The firearms are all loaded in trucks, 4 in total. I can drive one, you guys can take the other 3, Yun Jian told them. Lu Shiyun answered quickly, "We can. Hong Fan, Fang Xiaoran, and I have all gotten our driver's licenses. It's no problem for us to drive the trucks." In the outside world, they all addressed each other by code names, but in this room there was no need for that. What's more, the most dangerous people were already dead. Lu Shiyun did not ask why Yun Jian knew how to drive a truck as well. In fact, Yun Jian had become an omnipotent figure in their hearts. If it were not for her, it would be difficult for them to complete the mission. What more completing it in less than half a day? Before they departed, Lu Shiyun contacted Gu Junjian. Yun Jian then led them to steal the 4 trucks. There were no obstacles along the way. When they drove out, Gu Junjian, whom they had contacted earlier, had already sent someone to pick them up. They returned home that night. They only returned to Longmen City when it was almost evening the next day and saw Gu Junjian right away. Looking at Gu Junjian, whom they had just bid farewell to yesterday, but met again today, a sense of pride rose within them. They had completed a mission that even the Advanced Special Forces found difficult to complete in less than half a day. They were back again. How could he not be proud? Although all this pride was given to her by Yun Jian. Hence, they were inwardly grateful to Yun Jian. The first thing Gu Junjian said when he saw everyone was, "Thank you for your hard work." Although the crowd did not see the change in Gu Junjian's expression, it was not difficult to see that Gu Junjian also had mixed feelings. He was right about Yun Jian, but then again, it wasn't strange for someone who could kill Wolfblade, who was ranked 10th on the international assassin rankings, to have such abilities. Rest well for the next few days. I've already spoken to the school on your behalf, Junjian continued. Also, After this mission is completed, the higher-ups will give you a reward. You will be informed when the time comes. After Ge Junjian finished speaking, he asked someone to drive Yun Jian and the others home one by one. Just as Yun Jian got home, she saw Qin Yuru, who did not go to work, packing a bunch of things. She even stuffed them into an old bag and was about to leave with it. "Mom, where are you going?" Yun Jian asked. "Xiao Jian, you're back?" Qin Yuru looked up at Yun Jian tiredly and chuckled dryly. "Your dad has returned to Xinjiang town. I'm planning to go there with my documents to look for him and sign the divorce agreement to get a divorce." Yin Gang had returned to Xinjiang town? Yun Jian frowned subtly. Yun Jian did not even keep quiet as she told Qin Yuru, "Mom, I'll go with you." Yun Jian was worried that Yun Gang and her aggressive grandmother in name, Lu Lanhua, would bully Qin Yuru if she did not go with Qin Yuru. Chapter 254. Qin Yuru did not refuse this time. After the previous incident, she no longer treated Yun Jian as a child. Moreover, she was not confident about going back alone. After all, with her mother-in-law Lu Lanhua's shrewish personality, if they really got into a fight, it was unknown whether the divorce would go through. If Yun Jian went back with her, it would give Qin Yuru a sense of security. "Okay." Qin Yuru nodded. "Then let's go take the bus now." "Okay." Yun Jian agreed. She reached out to take Qin Yuru's bag. "Mom, let me take it." Qin Yuru was gratified and let Yun Jian take the bag from her. Qin Yuru and Yun Jian went to the bus station to board the bus back to Xinjiang town. It was the last bus in winter. Qin Yuru had planned to take the bus home today and then return to her parents' house to stay the night. She would visit her parents' house while she was at it. She would then go to Yun Gang Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning to get a divorce. Qin Yuru had returned to Xinjiang town before the sky turned dark because she would only knock off in the evening. She did not plan to work overtime today, so she had applied for leave the next morning and morning. Once she was done with the divorce, she would rush back to work immediately, so she only delayed her work by half a day. She planned to return to her parents' house to stay the night. Although Qin Yuru's parents' house was not good, it was still her parents' house. At the end of the day, she had to be filial to her mother because her mother was the one who raised her. No matter how disharmonious they were, she could not lose her filial piety. Qin Yuru and Yun Jian only arrived at Xinjiang town when it was already dark. Qin Yuru carried a big bag of fruits back to her parents' house. When she opened the door to her parents' house, she looked around but did not see anyone. "It's probably because your grandmother and the rest aren't here," Qin Yuru mumbled softly to herself. Yun Jian did not want to come here. After all, Zhang Meihua's family had treated Qin Yuru and her like that. However, according to Qin Yuru, she was still her mother no matter what. She still had to show her filial piety. At most, she would avoid contact with her in the future. Not long after she said that, a few people walked in. Zhang Meihua and the others came back from the market with a bunch of vegetables, fruits, fish, and meat. It was as if they were going to hold a big banquet. At that moment, they all had smiles on their faces. The cheerful smiles froze abruptly when they saw Yun Jian and Qin Yuru. Fear flashed across their faces. Zhang Meihua, her face turned green when she saw Yun Jian. Oh God, why was her terrifying granddaughter here again? The last time Yun Jian threw a flying dagger at them, the scene where the dagger got stuck in the wall was still fresh in their minds. Zhang Meihua, in particular, had peed her pants on the spot. She still shuddered when she recalled it today. Why are you guys here?" Zhang Meihua was terrified. She took a few steps back and looked at Yun Jian with fear in her eyes. Qin Laiqian followed behind Zhang Meihua and stared at Yun Jian fearfully as well. He looked like he had seen a ferocious beast in the river. If others were to see this, they would probably snicker. After all, Zhang Meihua was Yun Jian's grandmother, and Qin Laiqian was Yun Jian's uncle. Both of them looked panicked and fearful when they saw Yun Jian. It was truly shocking. "Mom, don't be scared. Xiao Jian and I came back today to visit you guys. I'm planning to file for divorce with Yun Gang tomorrow morning, so we'd like to stay here for the night. Also, here's some fruits. Xiao Jian and I picked them out from the fruit stall beside the bus stop. They're fresh, so we brought them for you guys to try." Qin Yuru placed the fruits on the table. Zhang Meihua had long felt Yun Jian's threatening gaze. How would she dare to chase them away? The lesson from last time was unforgettable. Okay, stay. Feel free to stay. Zhang Meihua took a few glances at Yun Jian and gulped. Qin Yiru smiled when she heard that. This was her mother after all. Even if she did not like them, she did not wish for them to become enemies. Right, Mom? You guys bought so many things. Are you treating us to dinner? Qin Yiru asked with a glance at the things Zhang Meihua and Zhang Meihua had brought back. Zhang Meihua had calmed down, and her attitude was not as harsh as before. Probably due to her fear of Yun Jian, her tone was gentler. It's Fong Fong who's coming back to visit her parents today. Chapter 255. Qin Yiru smiled when she heard that Qin Fong Fong was coming back. Qin Fong Fong was the only one in Qin Yiru's generation who managed to get into university. Even among her peers, Qin Fong Fong's grades were the best. Not to mention now, in Qin Yiru's generation, the number of people who managed to get into university could be counted with one's fingers. Therefore, in the past, the villagers all had the feeling that whoever's child could get into university was a talent. Qin Fong Fong was undoubtedly a talent. She got into a famous university in another province and settled down there after graduation. In the end, she even met a rich boyfriend and got married in another province. She rarely came back. Qin Fong Fong, on the other hand, was the closest to Qin Yiru among the Qins. The two sisters were so close that they could talk about anything. However, Qin Fong Fong went to university, worked, and got married, so she did not have time to come back. Therefore, their relationship faded as time passed. When Zhang Meihua heard that her youngest daughter was going back home to visit her parents, she was all smiles. Her youngest daughter had always been her pride. She was good at her studies when she was young. Not only did she get into a famous university, she even married a rich man. Oh my, it was said that he was worth millions. His family could even afford to drive a car. In this era, those who could afford to drive a car were definitely from a rich family. Honk, honk, honk. Not long after, the sound of a car horn came from outside the door. Zhang Meihua heard it and ran out immediately. Qin Yiru pulled Yun Jian and followed Zhang Meihua and the rest out. At this moment, they saw a black Santana outside the door, honking as it drove over. Hearing the honking along the way, some of the neighbors who were at home for a blind date ran out and looked at it with envy. Someone even pointed at the Santana and shouted, "Look, it's a car. Rich people." In this era, it was rare to see a car in a small town like Xinjiang town. Even if there was a car, it would only be driven back by the rich who went out to work. In the entire town, there were probably only one or two families who could afford to drive a car. Therefore, when Zhang Meihua heard the neighbor's praises, her face was full of smiles and pride. That was her son-in-law's car. The sedan was also honking loudly as it drove all the way to the door. The passenger door of the car opened, and a fashionably dressed woman got out of the Santana. "Mom, sis, you're all here." The woman saw Zhang Meihua and Qin Yiru and shouted in surprise. This fashionably dressed woman was undoubtedly Qin Fong Fong, Qin Yiru's sister and Yun Jian's aunt. She looked happy just a moments to come back. She frowned, her face, who was just radiant just now, instantly her face, who was just now, she was to, who was just a moment ago, who was just a moment ago, her to s to look, she was to her to be, was to be twos. "No, it's the same as the last time I saw you." Qin Yiru chuckled awkwardly, trying to ease the tension. "You have to take good care of yourself." Qin Fong Fong consoled Qin Yiru. She then noticed Yun Jian, who was standing beside Qin Yiru. She took a few glances at Yun Jian and exclaimed in surprise, "Ah, is this Xiao Jian? You've grown so big." "Xiao Jian, this is your aunt. Quick, greet her." Qin Yiru nudged Yun Jian with a smile. Yun Jian had a good impression of Qin Fong Fong when she saw how well she treated Qin Yiru. "Auntie," Yun Jian called out. "Oh, good girl." Qin Fong Fong beamed. "Oh my, what is this lousy place? It's so shabby. Fong Fong, come over quick." A wealthy woman in her 50s or 60s alighted from the Santana. She was dressed in branded fur, and her tone was indescribably smug. This person was Qin Fangfang's mother-in-law, Zhu Hongxiang. Chapter 256. Zhu Hongxiang was in her 50s or 60s, but her skin was smooth and well-maintained, making her look like she was in her 30s or 40s. She did not look old at all. Judging from her appearance, Zhu Hongxiang also had a radiant face. She was also quite good-looking. It could be seen that when she was young, she must have been a great beauty. However, the words that came out of her mouth were not as pleasant. Qin Fangfang smiled awkwardly and ran back to help her mother-in-law. It was Zhu Hongxiang's first time in Xinjiang town. She had refused to come in the past, but insisted on tagging along today. In addition, Zhu Hongxiang's overbearing manner was disagreeable. "Oh, my in-law, you're here. Shaowen is here too. Welcome, welcome." Zhang Meihua put on her signature smile and went up to her. Zhang Meihua had met Zhu Hongxiang before. She was the one who had gone out of the province to discuss Qin Fangfang and Sun Baiwen's wedding. "I can't afford to be in law." Zhu Hongxiang did not give Zhang Meihua any face. After she finished speaking, she muttered a few more words. "Oh my, this place is so shabby. It's so shabby and small. I really don't know how to live here." Zhu Hongxiang grew up in a wealthy family and was a typical landowner's daughter. She had been living in the upper-middle-class society and had always looked down on those who lived at the bottom of society. Zhu Hongxiang quite liked Qin Fangfang as her daughter-in-law, but she had intervened when she heard about Qin Fangfang's family background. Her son, Sun Baiwen, had his heart set on Qin Fangfang and even said that he would marry no one else but her in this life. Zhu Hongxiang was afraid that her son would really not marry and the Sun family would have no descendants in the future, so she agreed to it reluctantly. Zhang Meihua and the rest heard Zhu Hongxiang's grumbling and smiled awkwardly. Sun Baiwen smiled as well. Sun Baiwen was different from Zhu Hongxiang. Although Zhu Hongxiang gave birth to Sun Baiwen, he looked gentle and polite. He was also a nice person and would not point out other people's shortcomings. "Mother-in-law, we're here in Longmen City for something, so we thought we'd drop by to visit you." Fangfang picked out quite a number of gifts, and they're in the trunk. "Let Brother Qin help me get them," said Sun Baiwen. All right. Here's the money. Go and get from little one. Go." Zhang Meihua couldn't stop smiling this time. She even patted Qin Liqian and urged him. Qin Yiru, who had been ignored, smiled awkwardly. Yun Jian, on the other hand, narrowed her eyes and remained silent. With Qin Yiru's help, a sumptuous dinner was quickly prepared. However, Zhu Hongxiang still said with disdain, "Is that all?" These words made Zhang Meihua feel awkward again. After all, this table of good wine and meat was something that they usually couldn't bear to eat. "Right, Shaowen, is there anything you need this time in Longmen City?" Zhang Meihua asked as she filled Sun Baiwen's third bowl of rice. After all, Qin Fangfang's family seldom came back, and Zhu Hongxiang was never willing to come here. Therefore, Zhang Meihua felt very strange. "Yes, there is." Sun Baiwen smiled and scratched his head, continuing, "Didn't we hear that Longmen City is going to hold an auto show soon? I heard that it's the biggest one in the country. It's going to be an exhibition of hundreds and thousands of luxury cars. We probably won't see it even once in a few decades. Our family sells cars as well, so we followed the trend and came to take a look." Zhang Meihua knew that Sun Baiwen's family made a fortune selling cars as well. "Are you serious? There's an auto show of this scale in Longmen City? How much money does it cost to hold a party like this?" Qin Liqian shouted excitedly when he heard that. Longmen City Auto Show. Yun Jian's eyelid twitched when she heard the name. It seemed that Zhang Zhifan had done his job of promoting it. Even people outside the province had heard about it. Chapter 257. In reality, Zhang Zhifan had already reorganized the entire storefront. At the same time, he had reserved a huge space for the car exhibition. The car exhibition was set to be held 5 days later. As for the other related personnel and all the arrangements, Zhang Zhifan had already made the necessary arrangements. Yun Jian was also relieved to hand new crews over to Zhang Zhifan to manage. Obviously, Zhang Zhifan did not disappoint. Of course it's true. There's a lot of publicity for the car exhibition this time. There will be hundreds to thousands of luxury cars. As long as you name a car, it'll be an eye-opener at the car exhibition. Sun Baiwen shouted excitedly. Zhang Meihua and the rest booed the moment Sun Baiwen said that. Zhu Hongxiang snickered when she saw that her son's words had caused an uproar among the crowd. What a bunch of ignorant people. The dinner was filled with men talking about men's affairs. The women chatted about women's daily life. Qin Yiru and Qin Fangfang had not seen each other for a long time. The two sisters were having a great time talking. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was stuffing her mouth with fish and meat without saying a word. Sigh. At this moment, Sun Baiwen sighed and said, "It's a pity that the auto show this time requires an invitation. Not everyone can enter." Qin Fangfang felt sad when she heard Sun Baiwen's disappointed gaze. Don't be discouraged. There are still 5 days until the car exhibition. Let's go find out how to get the invitation. If there's really no other way, we could just take a look outside the car exhibition. Let's give it a try. Qin Fangfang turned to look at her husband, Sun Baiwen, and stopped talking to Qin Yiru. Sun Baiwen looked at his wife, Qin Fangfang's comforting voice, and instantly warmed up. Is this the invitation to the car exhibition? Qin Yiru thought about it for a few seconds. She suddenly grabbed her bag and took out about 10 cards with a high-end sports car printed on the front and New Cruise Auto Show invitation written on the back. Sun Baiwen unconsciously glanced at the cards in Qin Yiru's hand, and he stood up in surprise. A sense of astonishment filled his heart. Right. This is the invitation letter for New Cruise's Auto Show. But why do you have it? And you have at least a dozen invitations in your hands. New Cruise only sent out 1,000 invitations to the outside world, and those who were invited were all leaders of the business world. Long Xiao. Even we didn't have the right to be invited. Sun Baiwen stared at the invitations that Qin Yiru had taken out in shock, stupefied. The auto exhibition organized by New Cruise this time only invited the rich or powerful bosses. Even those big bosses only had one invitation letter in their hands at most. There were already people in the market who were buying the invitation cards at high prices just to witness the splendor of the country's largest auto show. One invitation card could be sold at a sky-high price. However, the problem was that many big bosses refused to sell the invitation cards because they wanted to witness the show's splendor. Under such circumstances, it was shocking that Qin Yiru could take out more than 10 invitations at once. Everyone looked at Qin Yiru in shock. I was given these by the manager of New Cruise when I was working there. He said that I could ask my relatives and friends to take a look. I don't know what these are, and I didn't plan to attend such an event. I was planning to throw them away in a few days. Qin Yiru was stunned as well. She did not expect the invitation cards in her hand to be so important. You work at New Cruise? Sun Baiwen asked in shock, as if he had discovered a new continent. Yes, I'm just a cleaning lady. Qin Yiru was at a loss. Cleaning lady, you got more than 10 invitations? Sun Baiwen almost fainted from the shock. He had thought of many ways to get an invitation card before he came, but he could not do anything in the end. Chapter 258. Qin Yiru did not understand the question, but she nodded blankly. Yun Jian, who was sitting next to Qin Yiru, paused as she held a small cup of water. A faint smile spread across her lips. She took a sip of water and gulped it down. Qin Yiru's invitation was naturally given to her by the manager of New Cruise. At the same time, Yun Jian had also instructed Zhang Jifan to hire more cleaning ladies so that Qin Yiru's area would be divided into the smallest area. Now, Qin Yiru's daily work was more relaxed than those graduates from prestigious universities who came out to work in the office. Moreover, a monthly salary of 1,500 yuan was not considered low in 1998. That was why Qin Yiru was able to save money after deducting her monthly expenses. Why don't you guys take these invitations? I don't need them anyway. I won't attend that kind of event. Qin Yiru generously placed the invitations on the table and pushed them to Sun Baiwen. When Sun Baiwen's mother, Zhu Hongxiang, saw this, she quickly reached out to take them. However, Sun Baiwen reached out to stop her. We only need one. One invitation will allow our whole family to go in and watch the car show. Sun Baiwen only took one of the invitations and returned the rest to Qin Yiru in a friendly manner. He even thanked Qin Yiru politely. "Thank you, sister." One invitation would allow their whole family to go in and watch the car show. As long as one person had one invitation, they could bring their family and friends to visit. There was no limit to the number of people they could bring. This was also an idea that Yin Jian came up with. The cars she sold were targeted at the big bosses. Even if ordinary people went, they would not be able to afford them. This was not to say that Yin Jian looked down on the poor, but it was a business concept. Of course, if the big bosses brought their family and friends to visit, it would be very different. Usually, the family and friends of the big bosses would not be too poor. Especially the friends of the big bosses. They would only become friends because they were in the same circle. Therefore, most of them had families that could afford cars. Therefore, if these people went, they would most likely spend money to buy cars in the future. After dinner, the sky was completely dark. However, Xinjiang town had street lights at night, so there was no need to worry about the dark. Qin Fangfang dragged Qin Yiru out for a walk. At night, Qin Fangfang requested to sleep with Qin Yiru. The two sisters had a lot of things to talk about since they were rarely together. Fortunately, there were plenty of rooms in Zhang Meihua's house, so she arranged one for Yun Jian. Although Sun Baiwen couldn't hug his wife to sleep for the whole night, he could understand Qin Fangfang very well, so he agreed. The next morning, Yun Jian returned to her first home since her rebirth with Qin Yiru. At the door, she also saw Yun Gang, her irresponsible father, whom she had met not long ago in the casino. Qin Yiru wanted to divorce Yun Gang, but Yun Gang refused. In the end, it was Yun Jian's grandfather, Yun Zhong, who felt that his son had ruined the family and forced him to sign the divorce agreement. It was only then that the matter was settled. The matter was finally settled. When the Civil Affairs Bureau was done with the last step, Qin Yiru took a few deep breaths. The weather today was similar to when she and Yun Gang registered their marriage. The sun was high up in the sky. Under the sunlight, there was a hint of warmth amidst the cold. To be honest, she had lived with Yun Gang for so many years. It would be a lie to say that she had no feelings for him. However, as time went by, Yun Gang committed more and more mistakes. Her patience had been worn out. Yun Jian held Qin Yiru's hand. Holding her mother's rough hand, Qin Yiru made their way to the bus stop back to Longmen City. She swore that she would never let Qin Yiru suffer in the future. Chapter 259. After returning to Longmen City, Yun Jian had a few more carefree days. Soon, it was the day of the auto show. In the morning, Yun Jian was already awake when the sun was still rising. She had asked Zhang Xiaofeng and Chun Sini to watch the auto show together. Ling Yichen was also tagging along. Both Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were boys, so it was only natural that they were fond of racing and machinery. Once they heard that Yun Jian asked if they were interested in watching the auto show, they agreed without hesitation. When they found out that the auto show this time was the largest auto show in the country organized by new crews which had been in the limelight recently, Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were dumbfounded. "Master, do you have an invitation for this place?" Standing at the entrance of the auto show, Zhang Xiaofeng glanced at Yun Jian and asked with a twitch of his lips as he watched the guards checking the invitations. "No." Yun Jian smiled breezily and led the way. "Oh no. Huh? No. How do we get in if we didn't? Hey, master, wait for us." Zhang Xiaofeng did not react for a moment before he caught up to Yun Jian's light steps with Chun Sini, who had been giggling with a hand over her mouth, and Ling Yichen, who was glaring at him. When they reached the entrance where the invitations were checked, Yun Jian and the rest were stopped. The guard did not recognize Yun Jian and assumed that Yun Jian and the rest were naughty kids and stopped them on the spot. His tone was not pleasant either. "This is an auto show, not a place for kids to play. Little girls and little boys, did you come to the wrong place?" The guard thought that he was the one who was checking the invitations for the auto show, so he was feeling smug. He spoke to Yun Jian and the rest in a dignified and confident manner. Yun Jian did not have an invitation because she did not bring it with her, and there was no need for it. Ignoring the gatekeeper, Yun Jian typed a message on her phone and sent it out. Not long after, A strong man rushed out of the door. The person in charge was one of Zhang Zifan's brothers. He had followed Zhang Zifan out of Xinjiang town. The person's surname was Wu. Steward Wu was in charge of maintaining order in the venue. Receiving Zhang Zifan's instruction that Sister Jian was here, he put down what he was doing and rushed out. Walking to Yun Jian, Steward Wu bent down to look at Yun Jian with a smile, addressing her respectfully in front of everyone. Sister Jian, you're here. Why didn't you come in directly? We've been waiting for you for a long time. When a gatekeeper saw that his superior had come, he was going to complain to Yun Jian and the other kids for not leaving. Unexpectedly, Steward Wu went to Yun Jian and addressed her as Sister Jian. Sister? Could it be that the girl he stopped had a higher status than Steward Wu? I was stopped, so I had to ask you to come out. Yun Jian gave a half-smile, her emotions unreadable. After that, she led the three of them into the auto show's entrance, who were still in shock with their mouths agape. Steward Wu stood rooted to the spot before he turned to scold the gatekeeper who stopped Yun Jian and the rest. Xiao Wang, you've King caused trouble for me. If Sister Jian blames you, you'll have to bear the consequences. It was obvious that Steward Wu knew the gatekeeper named Xiao Wang. Steward Wu, can it be that serious? Xiao Wang was dumbfounded. He did not expect that he was the one who stopped the girl just now. Could it be that serious? Do you know who's organizing this auto show? Who do you think we relied on to get to where we are today? Steward Wu growled at Xiao Wang. Chapter 260. On the other side, Yun Jian, who had successfully entered the auto show, led Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, and Chen Sini around. Master, I didn't expect the person in charge of this auto show to call you Sister Jian. Zhang Xiaofeng could not help grumbling. Yun Jian merely smiled without saying anything. The scale of this auto show was huge. Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two had been exclaiming since they entered the entrance. Oh my God! The world-famous cars that we used to only see in drawings can all be seen here. I think this must be the biggest auto show that's been held in our country so far. I really don't know who organized such a grand auto show. Ling Yichen cried out in surprise. These cars are secondary. There are 3 international limited edition supercars at the front hall. Do you guys want to go take a look? Yun Jian asked with a raised brow at the trio's ecstatic expressions. Wow, really? We're going. Zhang Xiaofeng shouted. With Yun Jian leading the way, the group went to the front hall. The 3 limited edition supercars at the front hall were actually the highlight of this auto show. They were the reason why both insiders and outsiders wanted to catch a glimpse of their splendor. There were only a handful of limited edition supercars in the world. As for the limited edition supercars, even some rich tycoons would find it hard to buy them. It was even more priceless in the market. Moreover, it was an auto show with 3 limited edition supercars as the highlight. How could it not attract the attention of the tycoons? The 3 limited edition supercars in the front hall were already surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. Everyone was looking at the 3 limited edition supercars with a sense of possessiveness. By the time Yun Jian and the others arrived, the place was already crowded. On the other hand, the 3 limited edition supercars were surrounded by a protective fence. The people around them only knew how to admire the cars. There was no commentator for the 3 limited edition supercars. First, it was because they were limited edition supercars. Most of the commentators would have a hard time describing the cars in a captivating manner. Secondly, it was because this was a supercar. The commentators themselves had never had the chance to touch it, so it was even harder for them to talk about it. Yun Jian saw many familiar faces in the crowd, including Mayor Gu, the mafia boss Su Zetian, and others who had been invited. She pursed her lips. Just as she was about to lead Zhang Xiaofeng and the other 2 over, she heard Qin Fangfang's voice. Xiao Jian, are you here for a visit too? Is your mother here? Qin Fangfang stopped Yun Jian when she saw her. When Yun Jian saw that it was her aunt, Qin Fangfang, and the others, she nodded and said, My mom didn't come. She didn't go to work today. She said that today's event was too lively, so she didn't want to join in the fun. Hearing that her sister did not come, Qin Fangfang could not help but feel disappointed for a while. A sarcastic voice then rang. Hey, Fong Fong, this is your sister's daughter who gave your family an invitation to the auto show and is now working as a cleaner in New Cruise, right? Yin Jian heard the sharp and malicious voice. Squinting her eyes, she saw a woman dressed to the nines standing beside Zhu Hongxiang. The woman was actually Zhu Hongxiang's biological daughter, Qin Fongfong's sister-in-law, Sun Baiyin. Beside Sun Baiyin was a man with a beer belly. It was Sun Baiyan's husband, Jiang Shengnan. When Qin Yuru gave Sun Baiyin an invitation, Zhu Hongxiang called her married daughter and son-in-law to come over immediately, saying that she wanted to watch the auto show. Sun Baiyin was helpless, but he could only go along with his mother. Sun Baiyin was exactly the same as her mother, Zhu Hongxiang. She had been pampered and spoiled since she was young and had always been high and mighty. Qin Fongfong frowned when she heard Sun Baiyin's unpleasant words. Sun Baiyin, don't you spout nonsense in front of the child. Qin Fongfong could not help shouting. I'm not spouting nonsense. Ha! Her mother is a cleaner in New Cruise. It's the truth. Can I talk about it? TSK. No matter how noble some people pretend to be, they can't change the fact that they came from a poor village. Chapter 261. When Qin Fongfong married Sun Baiyin. Other than Sun Baiyin, who treated her sincerely, she did not have a good relationship with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Fortunately, Sun Baiyin had always been on his wife's side. Therefore, Qin Fongfong tolerated as much as she could until now. In spite of it, her sister-in-law was getting out of hand, criticizing her sister in front of Xiao Jian. Qin Fongfong was enraged. Usually, Qin Fongfong could treat it as if nothing had happened when Sun Baiyin gossiped. But it was really inexcusable to talk about adult matters in front of child. Moreover, when Qin Fongfong saw Sun Baiyin criticizing Qin Yuru in front of Yin Jian and in front of Yin Jian's friends, she was afraid that Yin Jian would be looked down upon by her friends. Because she was worried about Yin Jian, Qin Fongfong was truly angry with her sister-in-law for the first time. Sun Baiyin, if you dare spout nonsense in front of the children again, I'll break your tongue. Qin Fongfong said, looking like she was really going to hit Sun Baiyin. Sun Baiyin was terrified when she saw that Qin Fongfong was truly enraged. She quickly hid behind Zhu Hongxiang and tugged at the corner of the latter's shirt, shouting, "Oh my, she's rebelling. Mom, your daughter-in-law is getting bolder. She's going to hit her sister-in-law." She sounded like she was telling the truth. Sun Baiyin's husband, Jiang Shengnan, stood like he was not there, not daring to say a word. Zhu Hongxiang was on her daughter's side, of course. When she saw how Qin Fongfong was behaving, she did not care that she was in public and acted like a shrew. She pointed at Qin Fongfong and said, "Great! You're rebelling. How dare you hit my yin-yan? You!" Just as Zhu Hongxiang was about to explode, Yun Jian shielded Qin Fongfong behind her and told Zhu Hongxiang and her friends, "Arguments aren't allowed during the auto show. If you make a ruckus again, get lost." Yun Jian's words made their eyelids twitch. Only Zhang Xiaofeng and his friends stood aside and watched. They knew that those who offended Yun Jian would not end well. "Who do you think you are?" Zhu Hongxiang shouted without thinking. Her shout was so loud that it attracted the attention of a group of big bosses who were watching the auto show. "Are we supposed to leave just because you told us to?" Zhu Hongxiang continued to curse Yun Jian loudly. Her words were getting worse and worse. "Why don't you take a look at yourself? Don't act like you're the supervisor of an auto show. Aren't you just the daughter of a cleaning lady in New Cruise? Look at your poor and pedantic appearance. What right do you have to tell us to scram?" At this moment, Zhu Hongxiang seemed to have forgotten that the reason they were able to participate in the auto show was because of the disdainful cleaning auntie that she had mentioned. Biting the hand that feeds you is nothing more than this. "Mom, stop talking. You've gone too far." Sun Baiyin couldn't help but frown when he heard that. He stood up and said to Zhu Hongxiang. At that moment, a middle-aged man's voice cut through the air with a hint of anger and boldness. "Because Yun Jian is the director of New Cruise and the founder of this auto show. Don't tell me she doesn't have the right to chase all of you away when you're not even invited to the auto show." Zhang Jifan, who had just witnessed the scene, stomped over angrily from afar. How dare she slander their sister Jian? This old hag must be tired of living. However, after hearing Zhang Jifan's words, the surrounding people all stared at the plainly dressed young lady with their tongues tied. Zhang Xiaofeng, Chun Sini, and Ling Yichen were dumbfounded. Qin Fangfang and Sun Baiwan were stunned. Zhu Hongxiang and Sun Baiyin, on the other hand, were ashen-faced when they heard that. What? New Cruise's director was Yun Jian. Chapter 262. Shock aside, Zhang Jifan was already standing in front of Yun Jian by the time the crowd recovered. Zhang Jifan, who was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, was completely different from the gangster who made a living by lending money to loan sharks. All these changes were bestowed upon him by Yun Jian. Zhang Jifan went to Yun Jian and bowed at Yun Jian, calling out, "Sister Jian." His greeting was an announcement to everyone present that she, Yun Jian, was the director of New Cruise. There was no one else. It was not an empty promise. The crowd snapped out of their shock. Ha ha ha. A deep chuckle was heard. What came into everyone's view was Mayor Gu's smiling face. "Little girl, we meet again. I really didn't expect that you would be the one who organized the auto show this time. Your New Cruise's director." Mayor Gu exclaimed before he seemed to recall something and exclaimed, "No wonder you bought a storefront that wasn't worth that much at the auction the last time with a whopping 14 million yuan. So it's to start a company." Forget where Yun Jian's money came from. Her purchase of a storefront for more than 10 million yuan was the height of stupidity in other people's eyes. Even Mayor Gu could not wrap his head around it. Now he knew. 10 million yuan aside, the storefront was definitely worth it if it was used well. Yun Jian used it to organize an auto show and publicize the company's name. Rich bosses would then come to buy cars. In this day and age, as long as the company's name was made known, even billionaires from other provinces would come here just to buy branded cars. What did some bosses use their money for? To buy branded cars and show off. Yun Jian had presented 3 limited edition sports cars in this auto show. Which car marketing company in the Z Nation could compare to this kind of capital? Limited edition supercars were hard to come by in the entire world, but Yun Jian had managed to get her hands on 3 of them. When the time came, she would be able to earn tens of millions by selling a luxury car. The money that she, Yun Jian, had spent would be as good as flowing water. Moreover, the effect of her promotion of the company had already caused a huge commotion in the automobile industry of Z country. New Cruise would probably be the first choice for rich bosses to buy cars in the future. However, the people next to Mayor Gu were paying attention to the sentence. Yun Jian spent more than 14 million yuan to buy this store at the auction. More than 14 million. Heavens! Not to mention the 1998 era. Even in the modern era, this was a huge sum of money that ordinary people might not be able to save in their entire lives. Even Qin Fangfang's husband's family, Sun Baiwan's family, which could be said to be a rich and famous family, only had a few million in assets. What about Yun Jian? Buying a storefront cost more than 10 million. This was the difference. Zhang Xiaofeng and the other 2 were stunned once again. Now, Zhang Xiaofeng's blood was boiling. Who would dare to say that his master was poor in the future? He would fight with his life on the line. Mayor Gu, we meet again. Yun Jian squinted and nodded at Mayor Gu. Not bad. This little girl has a bright future ahead of her. Mayor Gu squinted and laughed out loud. He could not help but compliment her. After Yun Jian and Mayor Gu nodded, she turned to look at the pale Zhu Hongxiang and said, "As you said, my mom works in my company. What's wrong with sweeping the floor? She's experiencing life. Unlike some people who look glamorous on the surface, but are as shrewish as a shrew behind her back." Zhu Hongxiang had just mocked Yun Jian for being poor, but learning how to do things from rich people. Now, Yun Jian was returning the same words to her. Chapter 263. It was Zhu Hongxiang's first time being reprimanded in public. Zhu Hongxiang was born in a prestigious family with superior conditions since she was young, and her husband was a match for her after she got married. She was a typical upper-class family. Zhu Hongxiang had never been scolded like that in her entire life. However, no matter how dumb she would not go against Yun Jian. Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise. How would Zhu Hongxiang dare to retort with such a status? Huh? Yun Jian chuckled when she saw that Zhu Hongxiang dared not respond to her anymore. Then, Yun Jian pulled Qin Fangfang, who had yet to react to the situation, and warned Zhu Hongxiang and Sun Baiyan, who stood beside her. If I find out that my aunt is bullied by you guys in the future, don't blame me for not reminding you. Let's see which manufacturer dares to continue working with your family's car dealership in the future. Yun Jian was blatantly threatening them. Without the cooperation of a manufacturer, there is only one outcome for a car dealership: bankruptcy. In spite of it, only she, Yun Jian, was capable of uttering such arrogant words. At the same time, Yun Jian's message was that she had the ability to make an established car dealership go bankrupt. Perhaps, if Yun Jian had said something like that before this, everyone would have treated it as a joke, thinking that she was young and frivolous. Now, however, an underage girl like her could organize such a grand auto show. The crowd thought that she was capable of doing what she said. Zhu Hongxiang paled. She had never thought that she would get herself into such a mess. She also did not expect Qin Fangfang's niece to be so capable after being looked down upon by her for so many years in poverty. She dared to bid for a storefront for more than 10 million yuan. Zhu Hongxiang knew very well that the Sun family's total assets were only a few million yuan. Compared to Yun Jian, it was nothing. Xiao Jian, all right, that's enough. Qin Fangfang finally snapped back to reality and held Yun Jian, who stood up for her. After all, this was her mother-in-law. Even if her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were not on good terms, they still had to live together. Yun Jian stopped talking after hearing Qin Fangfang's words. Of course, she knew when to stop. She had already warned Zhu Hongxiang and Sun Baiyan. Unless they were idiots, they would not dare to do anything else. Yun Jian also knew that if she continued to speak, it would make things difficult for Qin Fangfang. Thus, they stopped talking about this topic. For the sake of Qin Fangfang and the fact that Zhu Hongxiang and Sun Baiyan didn't dare to speak since just now, Yun Jian didn't really drive them out. However, no one paid any attention to them. At this time, Yun Jian was already chatting happily with Mayor Gu, while Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two followed beside her. Yun Jian led Mayor Gu to the 3 limited edition sports cars and introduced them to Mayor Gu one by one. This is a Pagani Zonda. It's a tricolor sports car from Italy, and there's only one in the world. It uses special LED lights on the front and back of the car. It's styled like an airplane's headlights. Yun Jian's fluent explanation stood out. Other than Mayor Gu, everyone who was standing in front of the sports cars to watch was captivated. If Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise, she would know the introduction of these limited edition sports cars despite her young age. Moreover, her explanation was extremely smooth. It was as if she knew these limited edition sports cars very well. Chapter 264. The auto show went on smoothly. After sending Qin Fangfang and her family off, the show came to a close. See you next time, girl, Mayor Gu said to Yun Jian when he left with Su Zetian. As he said that, Mayor Gu gestured to Yun Jian. Also, our government will support any promotional projects New Cruise has in the future. You can come to me if you run into any trouble. With Mayor Gu's assurance, Yun Jian smiled gratefully. Although she did not need help, it was good to have Mayor Gu's goodwill. After sending off everyone who came to watch the auto show, there were only the staff clearing the venue. Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan left. Looking at Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan, who were holding back their questions, Yun Jian smiled and told them, if you're willing, you can work for Jifan in the future. Yun Jian was planning to let Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan join her new cruise. Zhang Xiaofeng, Zhang Jifan, and Zhang Jifan came from rich families. They had lived a life of having everything taken care of and had never worked independently. Did Yun Jian mean that she wanted them to join New Cruise? This was no doubt a chance to break away from family and express themselves. We're willing. Of course we're willing. All three of them shouted in unison. Yun Jin pressed her lips into a smile. After the auto show, all sorts of sports cars, regular sedans, and affordable sedans that New Cruise promoted went on market. To everyone's surprise, New Cruise had sold 368 cars in less than 3 days of official car sales. This meant that they sold over 100 sedans on average in these few days. There were many expensive sports cars among them. Selling one of them would earn them millions of yuan. Of course, Longmen City's big bosses were not the only buyers. Some business tycoons who came because of their fame were there as well. New Cruise rose rapidly, earning a net profit of 30 million yuan in the month. The astounding sales made it the top car company in the country, let alone Longmen City's car marketing company. The company's reputation soared and swept the country. As the director of New Cruise, Yun Jian was sitting in the classroom, her fair and slender fingers twirling a black pen leisurely as she worked on a blank test paper on her desk. Yun Jian was in the first semester of her 3rd year in junior high school. She would face the first major exam of her life in half a semester, the senior high school entrance exams. Therefore, the school's teachers had increased their students' learning tasks, such as endless test papers every day. Yun Jian, while it was still all right, Zhang and Chen Sini, their heads were dizzy from the test paper. This weekend, Yun Jian was invited by Chu Ning and the others to celebrate the successful completion of their mission. Moreover, Gu Junjian had already applied for a reward for them from their superiors. Other than some monetary rewards, the 7 of them were directly promoted to official members of the Special Forces. It was no doubt a joyous event for Chu Ning and the rest. After some discussion, they decided to go on a trip this weekend to relax and change their moods. On Saturday morning, Yun Jin carried her school bag stuffed with a dozen hard-boiled eggs that Qin Yiru had prepared for her and went to meet up with Chu Ning and the rest. "Hey, Yun Jinner, we're here." Chu Ning was the first to see Yun Jian and greeted her. Yun Jian went over. The group then boarded the train to a famous mountain. Chapter 265. The train arrived at a place called Jinglian Town. The famous mountain was called Weiwu Mountain. The mountain was very high above sea level, and the mountain path was rugged and steep. Jinglian Town was an ancient town attached to the foot of Weiwu Mountain. It was not without reason that this place was chosen as a place to travel. It was because Weiwu Mountain was high above sea level, steep and winding. It was very suitable for adventurous and exciting activities. There was a well-known fact about Weiwu Mountain. Throughout the year, there were many tourists who want to climb this mountain, but only 1 in 10 had the ability to reach the top. This rumor attracted a large number of mountain climbing enthusiasts, especially when everyone wanted to be the only 1 out of 10 who could climb to the top of the mountain. However, many people returned without success. In fact, there was no one at the top, but according to those who had reached the top, tents could be set up on the mountain as long as they brought their own tents. Chu Ning and the rest alighted from the train. When they arrived at Jinglian Town, they were stunned by the towering Weiwu Mountain in front of them. Yun Jian merely squinted her eyes, but she raised a brow subtly when she saw Weiwu Mountain that was so tall that she could not even see its peak. Wow, this is Weiwu Mountain? To be honest, I wanted to climb this mountain for a long time. I heard that only 1 in 10 can climb to the top from the bottom of this mountain. Heh. Chu Xiangnan looked around the bottom of the mountain, his face agitated. Then let's go. Let's see who can run faster. Chu Ning rubbed her hands excitedly and was about to run ahead. Everyone, wait. The early morning sun shone on Yun Jian. It was very dazzling. Just as Yun Jian and the rest were about to go up the mountain, a voice came from behind them. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and turned sideways. She saw a few young men and women in their 20s standing behind them. This group of people was also carrying a travel bag. It seemed that they were also here to climb Weiwu Mountain. The person who just spoke was the sunny man standing at the front with a smile on his face. "Hello, I'm Chunyan. These are my classmates. May I ask if you're planning to go up the mountain too?" The man with a bright smile introduced in a friendly manner and asked. Yes. Yun Jian stood at the back of the group, but also at the front of Chunyan. She nodded and said, "Ah, that's great. Can we go up the mountain together? It's like this. We are university students. This time, we are a group to go up the Weiwu Mountain. However, we are unfamiliar with the place, so we want to find someone to go up the mountain together," Chunyin said. The sunlight bathed Chunyan's face. This Chunyin was still a very eye-catching, handsome guy. Sure. Chu Ning, who was walking at the front, saw Chunyan's handsome face. She ran back as if she was mesmerized. She looked at Chunyan with a smile and extended her hand to introduce herself. "I'm Chu Ning. Let's go together." That's great." Chunyin breathed in relief, but his gaze was on Yun Jian, who had her hands in her pockets. One had to admit that Yun Jian was very eye-catching. "Brother Yin, why are we looking for them?" I don't agree." At this moment, a pretty girl with 2 ponytails standing behind Chun Yin spoke up. The girl was about 19 or 20 years old. She seemed to have noticed Chun Yan's gaze on Yun Jian. Her angry face wrinkled even more. Chapter 266. Yeah, Chun Yan, I think little sister Xiaofeng is right. Why should we form a group? It's better for us to go our own ways. Look at them. They're as thin as a piece of paper. They probably won't even make it halfway up the mountain. We can't let unimportant people drag down our own progress. Standing next to the girl called Little Sister Xiaofeng, a man with a large build and weighing 150 pounds spoke to Chun Yan. There was no trace of politeness in his tone. The aggressive girl just now was called Wang Fengfeng. She was the prettiest girl in their university's finance and accounting department. The large man who spoke up for her was her suitor, Wu Hang. Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang's tone was full of confidence. In fact, the group of university students led by Chun Yan to climb Weiwu Mountain had all learned martial arts. At the same time, they were also members of the university's Taekwondo club. They had also participated in Taekwondo, Wushu, and wrestling competitions many times. They had defeated many of their peers and won many championship titles. Therefore, the tone of his voice was full of arrogance, and there was a hint of pride in it. Wang Fengfeng, on the other hand, favored Chun Yan. She was infuriated when she saw him staring at Yun Jian like that. In addition, Yun Jian's group of 7 did indeed look thin and weak. Because of the intensive training in the military training camp, even Chu Ning, who originally had a little baby fat and a small belly, had lost a lot of weight. The current appearance of the 7 of them was symmetrical, thin, and weak. Therefore, Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang seized the opportunity to say that they were weak. "Do you think we want to go with you?" We'll go our own way." Who would feel good after hearing that? Chu Xiaonan was the first to shout back. Then, he turned around and left. Chu Ning heard Chun Yan's classmates, Wang Fengfeng and Wu Hang, and suddenly felt a little awkward. "It seems like your classmates don't welcome us. Then, let's part ways here." Compared to the emotional ups and downs of the few people, Yun Jian was extremely calm. She said to Chun Yin indifferently, then turned around and walked to the bottom of Weiwu Mountain. She had never been a person who looked for trouble. Seeing that Yun Jian had made her stand, the others followed suit. Chu Ning, who was standing beside Chun Yin, couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. In the end, she had no choice but to say goodbye and chase after Yun Jian and the others. The morning light shone on the girl who was walking towards the top of the mountain step by step, covering Yun Jian with a thin layer of light. Chun Yin was stunned the moment he saw this naturally noble and inviolable figure. At this time, he stared at Yun Jian for a long time, unable to move his eyes away. "Brother Yin? Brother Yin? Brother Yin." Wang Fengfeng waved her hand in front of Chun Yan's face several times before he retracted his gaze. Wang Fengfeng was even more annoyed. Why was that girl so annoying? Yun Jian and the others had already climbed up the mountain along the cement path. They could also feel that the mountain road was getting steeper and steeper, and their strides were getting more and more strenuous. Along the way, Yun Jian and the rest stopped for quite some time. They had a lot of snacks in their bags, so they stopped every now and then or drank a few sips of water. "Save? Save me. Save my son. Save him." At this time, a woman's scream came from the mountainside where Yun Jian and the others were. Yin Jian and the others looked at each other, packed up their bags, and walked back. After going down a few steep slopes, they saw a woman standing at the edge of the cliff and looking down. The woman's face was pale with fright, and she was so scared that her voice was almost muffled. Yun Jian walked over to take a look and saw that at the bottom of the steep cliff, a 7 or 8-year-old boy was hanging from a tree that grew on the edge of the cliff. The boy was hanging in the air, and his shirt was dangling from the tree, swaying back and forth. If the boy's shirt were to let go of the tree branch, what would face him would be a bottomless abyss, a cliff that couldn't be seen at all. There's a child hanging from a tree. Below is a cliff. Yin Jian and the others had just walked to the edge of the cliff when they saw a group of people coming down the slope. Wang Fengfeng, who was walking in front, pointed at the bottom of the cliff and screamed in fear. Chapter 267. Chunyin caught a glimpse of Yin Jian, who was coming back. Without any makeup, Yin Jian's jade-like skin was glossy and delicate. She had a natural beauty. She pursed her lips into a slight smile. Her upturned lips carried a kind of suffocating and mesmerizing charm that was eye-catching. Chunyin thought, this is love at first sight. Chunyin wanted to go with Yin Jian at first, so he didn't ask the other members of his group. He just wanted to get to know Yin Jian. And now, perhaps he wanted to play the hero in front of Yin Jian. Chunyin took off his black coat and handed it to Wang Fengfeng. Take it. Then Chunyin walked towards the little boy who was hanging on the branch of the cliff. The little boy's mother was crying and shouting for help. It wasn't hard to see that the little boy accidentally stepped on the flat ground just now because she wasn't paying attention. The little boy's small and thin body directly slipped over the iron fence. If it weren't for the rows of branches growing on the edge of the cliff, which the locals cultivated to prevent people from falling off the cliff, the little boy would probably have fallen off the cliff and been smashed to pieces. Brother Yin, don't. Chunyin wanted to save the little boy, but Wang Fengfeng pulled his sleeve. This cliff is so high, and it's so steep. What if something happens to you? Wang Fengfeng's worried eyes looked at Chunyin, her eyes filled with fear. Then Wang Fengfeng looked at the little boy's mother, who was standing on the edge of the cliff and desperately begging for help with disgust, and added, she didn't take care of her child. Why should she beg others to save her child? I think this woman deserves it. Chunyin was stopped by Wang Fengfeng for a moment, and he hesitated. Indeed, he just wanted to show off in front of Yin Jian, but the little boy was hanging on the branch of the cliff. There were no tools to save him here. If you want to save him, what if he fell down instead? Thinking of this, Chunyan's handsome face showed an inexplicable look of fear. Yun Jian saw all these expressions. She just smiled contemptuously. Then, she took off her backpack and slid it to the ground. Her fair and slender fingers pulled the zipper of the backpack, and she quickly took something out of it. Flying claw. Yun Jian, you actually remember to bring this? Chuning was still worried about the little boy who was dangling from the cliff and was about to fall when she saw Yun Jian take out a flying claw. She cried out in surprise. Military flying claw. With this thing, as long as it was fixed properly and he grabbed the rope, he could hang down to save the little boy. Yes. Yun Jian nodded. She swung her flying claw, and it caught a firm spot on the edge of the cliff. Then, she jumped off the cliff. When Chunyin and the others saw this scene, their eyelids twitched tightly. When they came back to their senses, they were all shocked, especially when they saw Yun Jian take out the flying claws. Who were they? Why would they bring a flying claw, a weapon that belonged to the special forces, when they were traveling? Just as they thought of this, Chunyin and the others were stunned. They saw Yun Jian move in a perfect arc. She used the flying claw and leaned towards the little boy. Then, she reached out and picked up the little boy. At the moment when everyone's hearts skipped a beat, she retracted the flying claw in her hand and stomped on a protruding cliff point. Then, she jumped up nimbly. When they looked again, Yun Jian had already rescued the little boy. Meanwhile, Chunyin and the others were dumbfounded. How was it that Yun Jian, who looked so thin and frail, was so agile and swift? This didn't make sense. Especially Wang Fengfeng and Wu Heng, who had said bad things about Yun Jian and the others. At this moment, there was no trace of redness on their faces. When Yun Jian rescued the little boy and placed him on the ground, she saw the little boy's face clearly. The little boy was very delicate and pretty. His skin was smooth and lustrous, and his cheeks were rosy. It was as if he didn't realize that he had just experienced a life-and-death situation. Yun Jian was dumbfounded. Under everyone's gaze, her beautiful pupils contracted. She stared at the little boy for a moment, her emotions changing rapidly. Chapter 268. Yun Jian sized up the little boy. Looking at the little boy's face that was identical to her little brother's, she couldn't help but think of her little brother's lively smile when she first saw him in her previous life. She also remembered the dried tear stains at the corner of her little brother's eyes when he died tragically. Little Zhu. Yun Jian reached out her hand. Although she had always been strong, her voice was trembling when she spoke. Her little brother's name was Yun Zhu. She still remembered the first time her little brother had seen her in her previous life. He had used his big black eyes to stare at her. His face was rosy, his lips were white, and his words were clear. He had blinked at her and said, "Are you my big sister?" Then he happily grabbed her big hand with his short and cold little fingers. He was overjoyed. That's great. Little Zhu has a big sister too. Little Zhu has a family too. Yun Jian and Yun Zhu's biological parents died in a car accident when Yun Zhu was 4 years old. The reason was that Yun Jian was kidnapped by the organization when she was very young. Her biological parents searched for her for more than 10 years. In the end, both of them died in a car accident during the search. Yun Zhu grew up in an orphanage. All these years, Yun Jian was trained as an agent in the Enhan organization. When Yun Jian had the ability to find her family before she was kidnapped, she only had her little brother left. Later, her little brother was used to threaten her and died tragically. Yun Jian's heart was not made of steel. She could be angry and hate this kind of world. The little boy in front of her was frightened by Yun Jian's sudden outstretched hand. He shrank back. Zhuer. At this time, the little boy's mother rushed over with tears in her eyes. She hugged the little boy tightly. The fear in her heart could not be described by the word fear. "Mom, this big sister seems to know my name." The little boy pointed at Yun Jian and said innocently to the woman. However, his eyes were dull. "Yes, Yun Jian, or what's wrong with you?" Everyone was surprised by Yun Jian's actions. Chu Ning could not help but be the first to ask. So this little boy was also called Yun Zhu. He was the same as her little brother. "I'm fine." Yun Jian closed her eyes and wore a half-pressed smile. Regardless of whether this little boy was her younger brother or not, since he had the same face as her younger brother and even had the same name as her younger brother, this gave her some hope. Perhaps her younger brother was still alive in another way. "Little girl, thank you. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you." After Yun Zhu's mother settled her child down, she walked over to Yun Jian to thank her. She was so sincere that she almost knelt down to thank Yun Jian. In the end, she was stopped by Yun Jian. At this moment, Chun Yin and the others who were standing at the side were very embarrassed. In the beginning, this group of people all thought that Yun Jian and the others were cowards, so they were very straightforward with their words. But what was the result? A 15 or 16-year-old girl had single-handedly rescued a little boy who was hanging on the edge of a cliff. By this time, Yun Jian had already met Yun Zhu's mother. Yun Zhu's mother was called Yun Hailan. She was a single mother, and Yun Zhu took her surname. This time, she came to Weiwu Mountain for her child, Duan Lian. According to Yun Hailan's mother, Yun Zhu had changed completely after he fell seriously ill a few months ago. His eyes became dull, and he did not like to talk. Sometimes, he would even scream in his nightmares, "No, don't kill me. Sob, 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 please don't kill me." Usually, he became very timid. At the age of 8, he did not even dare to go to the toilet alone in the middle of the night. Yun Hailan came to Weiwu Mountain because of Duan Lian and Yun Zhu's courage, but she did not expect something like this to happen. She did not expect that Yun Zhu would fall down the cliff, just because she was not paying attention. When Yun Jian heard Yun Hailan's words, she froze on the spot. A few months ago, wasn't that when she was reborn? Chapter 269. Could it be that her brother was reborn? Yun Jin suppressed the excitement in her heart. However, she knew one thing. Even if the little boy in front of her was her brother, he did not remember her. However, Yun Jin knew that her brother had been traumatized in his previous life. He was only 7 or 8 years old, but his head had been cut off. When he died, there were still traces of tears on his tender cheeks. "Mom, let's go home." At this moment, Yunju stretched out his hands to Yun Hailon. His face was still expressionless as he said those words in a daze. Okay. Let's go home." Yun Hailon reached out and carried Yunju. Then, she apologized to Yun Jian. "I wanted to go home, so I brought him home first. I didn't expect something like this to happen today. I won't bring him to such a dangerous place in the future. By the way, my house is nearby. If it's convenient, you can stay at my house for a few nights. This Weiwu Mountain is not easy to climb. Most people will come down not long after going up the mountain. The closer the mountain is to the top, the steeper the slope. Moreover, it could be life-threatening at any time. Therefore, most people would not risk their lives to climb up the mountain." "Okay." Yun Jian nodded. Her eyes were fixed on Yunju. Then, she made a decision. "I'm not going up the mountain. It seems that I'll have to trouble you for a few nights." She had to figure out what happened to her brother. "What? Yun Jian, you're not going up the mountain?" Chu Xiangnan was completely unaware of the situation. He shouted in surprise. "Yes, I'm not going." In fact, whether or not she climbed the mountain did not matter much to Yun Jian. Therefore, she nodded and replied to Chu Xiangnan. "You guys go ahead," Yun Jian said to Chu Xiangnan, Chu Ning, and the others. Then, she went down the mountain with Yun Hailon. Chun Yin watched Yun Jian go down the mountain. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he went up the mountain with Wang Feng and the others. Meanwhile, Yun Jian followed them to Yun Hailon's house alone. Yun Hailon's house was very shabby. She was a single mother, but her family was much more shabby than Yun Gang's. The few rooms here were made up of temporary wooden planks, barely enough for people to live in. "You live here?" Yun Jian frowned slightly. "Well, I hope you don't mind." Yun Hailon smiled at Yun Jian, with a hint of apology in her smile. "I won't." Yun Jian followed Yun Hailon into the house made of wooden planks. As she walked into the house, she could even feel the cold winter wind passing through the thin wooden planks and blowing at the people in the house. "Sorry, my house is a little shabby. You can sit anywhere," Yun Hailon said to Yun Jian. Yun Jian did not stand on ceremony. She sat down directly. While Yun Jian sat down and chatted with Yunju, Yun Hailon took the opportunity to start working. Because Yun Hailon's family was poor, she could only rely on handicraft to make a living. "Mom, I'm cold." At this moment, Yunju, who was wearing thin clothes, curled up and shouted. Yun Hailon gritted her teeth and said to Yunju, "Be good, Juer. I'll buy you a cotton-padded coat when I get my salary in a few days." Yun Hailon's family was so poor that they could barely afford food and clothing. The residents of Jinglian town generally lived in poor conditions. Yun Hailon had no work experience, and now she had to raise her child, so she was even more destitute. She did not even have the money to go to the hospital when Yunju's behavior became strange in recent months. When Yun Jian heard this, she took off her thick down jacket and put on Yunju. This is not right." Yun Hailon saw this and reached out to refuse. "The child is still growing. He needs warmth," Yun Jian explained. Yun Hailon was silent for a few seconds. She looked at Yun Jian gratefully and said with tears in her eyes, "Thank you." Chapter 270. When Yun Hailon heard the banging outside the door, she pricked her fingertip with the needle she was holding in her panic. She did not care about the blood that was slowly flowing out of her fingertip as she hurried over to push Yun Jian away. "Young lady, go hide in the house first. Go now." Yun Hailon pushed Yun Jian into the house. Yun Jian frowned and shook her head. The group of people outside obviously came with ill intentions. How could she leave Yun Hailon to hide? "Jurr, bring your sister inside to play," Yun Hailon said to Yunju, who was sitting on a stool when she could not persuade Yunjian. Yunju was not a talkative person, but he was still very obedient to his mother. Yunju went over to hold Yunjian's hand and led her into the house. Yunjian followed Yunju into the house because she saw Yun Hailan telling her softly, "I'm fine. Young lady, look after Zhu for me." After Yunjian and Yunju hid in the house, Yun Hailan turned to open the door. Creak! The thin door panel was opened. Yunjian could still see the scene through the crack of the door from the other room. Standing outside the door was a tall and burly man with thick arms and a bulging beer belly. Jinglian Town was not a peaceful town because the residents here were different from Longmen City. The living environment here was a few levels worse than Longmen City, so there was more social unrest here. The residents here would be forcefully collected protection fees. It was not unusual to see such incidents. Even the police could not do anything about these people who collected protection fees, because these people were all gangsters. All of them wielded knives and guns. Most importantly, these people had someone backing them up, so even the police could not do anything about them. There was a group of people standing behind the man, each of them holding something like metal rods in their hands. It was obvious that they were not good people. At this time, the tall man in the lead shook his fat body and stretched out a fat hand. He was holding a blade of grass in his mouth. He looked at Yun Hailan arrogantly. Where's the money?" Yun Hailan looked a little scared, but she forced herself to look at them normally. "Brother Nyo, our family is tight on money recently. Can you give me a few more days? After I finish this batch of work, I'll give you the money as soon as I get paid. What do you think?" Yun Hailan pleaded. She really had no money. If she had some extra money on hand, she wouldn't have refused to take her child to the hospital when he was so emotionally unstable. Mother f asterisk her, who the f asterisk ck are you trying to fool? The other families have already paid the protection fees, and you're the only one who's still dawdling. Brothers, let's go. Don't talk nonsense with this woman. Let's smash her house and see if she can pay for it. The man called Brother Nyo waved an iron rod and was about to hit Yun Hailan's thin body. Yun Hailan was already prepared to take a beating. Brother Nyo's group was unreasonable. Because they were gangsters, they usually stirred up trouble and had a powerful background. Even the police couldn't do anything to them. It was common for Yun Hailan to be beaten. Of course, before she was beaten, she would lock Yunju in the room so that the child wouldn't see it. She asked Yunjian to hide as well, because Yunjian was pretty. Brother Nyo's group was not only greedy, but they would also forcefully occupy beautiful women when they saw them. Many innocent girls in town had been defiled by this group of people. She was indebted to Yunjian. Of course, she couldn't watch Yunjian be bullied, so she asked him to hide and keep quiet. Just as the iron rod was about to hit Yun Hailan, a pair of fair and clean hands suddenly grabbed the iron rod. In the blink of an eye, Yunjian had already dashed out of the house next door. When Brother Nyo and his group saw Yunjian, their eyes lit up. What a beautiful woman! Chapter 271. Yunjian's appearance stunned Brother Nyo and the others, but at the same time, they also looked at her with lustful eyes. Yo, Yun Hailan, when did you hide such a beautiful girl in your house? Brother Nyo's tone immediately softened, and his tone was not as tough as before. Why did you come out? Go quickly, this has nothing to do with you. Yun Hailan was shocked to see Yunjian come out, and she quickly pushed Yunjian out of the house. Yun Hailan actually just wanted to protect Yunjian. You're here and you want to leave? Huh. Brother Nyo and the others blocked the door and stared at Yunjian with evil eyes. Yun Hailan, how about this? Let this little girl accompany us, and we'll waive this month's protection fee. What do you think? Brother Nyo rubbed his chin and looked at Yunjian and said to her with an evil smile, as if Yun Hailan had gotten a great bargain. Dream on. Yun Hailan gritted her teeth, and she suddenly summoned her courage to shout at Brother Nyo and the others. Yunjian was her benefactor, and Yun Hailan did not expect that Brother Nyo and the others would come to collect protection fee at this time, and she also did not expect that Yunjian would not listen to her and come out to stand up for her. Naturally, She would not let Yun Jin fall into the hands of evil people. Mother of asterisk Kerr, when did you get so bold? Huh? I'm giving you a chance today because of you. I won't collect this month's protection fee from your family. And your F asterisk king refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit? Brother Nyo said, and then he angrily smashed the iron rod on the door. Hearing Brother Nyo's words, Yun Jin laughed. Do you know the consequences of messing with a lion's head? Yun Jin raised her eyebrows. She suddenly curled her lips and looked at Brother Nyo and the others with disdain. Yo, little beauty, I can't guess such a deep mystery, but I know you're going to be mine soon. Brother Nyo narrowed his eyes and stared at Yun Jin. As he spoke, he even reached out his hand and wanted to pounce on Yun Jin. Brother Nyo immediately rushed towards Yun Jin, but before he could reach her, he was stopped by Yun Hailon. Yun Hailon's frail body blocked Brother Nyo and the others. She shouted desperately at Yun Jin, "Take Zhuer and run. Jump out of the back window. Don't look back. Go, go." Yun Jin narrowed her eyes. Run? This word had never appeared in Yun Jin's dictionary. Just as Yun Jin was about to kick Brother Nyo and his men away, Yun Zhu's voice was heard in the house. Mom! Yun Zhu had stood outside the house unknowingly. He saw the scene in front of him and cried out involuntarily, especially when he saw his mother desperately blocking Brother Nyo and his men with her body, not allowing them to come over. Brother Nyo and his men were even holding various weapons, such as knives and iron rods. A horrifying image suddenly appeared in Yun Zhu's mind. On knives, killing people. No, don't kill me. Yun Zhu suddenly hugged his head as if he had recalled something. He squatted down in pain. Xiao Zhu. Yun Jin's attention was attracted by Yun Zhu's actions. She stopped kicking Brother Nyo and his men and walked anxiously towards Yun Zhu. Xiao Zhu, what's wrong? Yun Jin would only lose control when her brother was in danger. Yun Jin squatted down to check on Yun Zhu's condition. On the other side, Brother Nyo, who was blocked by Yun Hailon at the door, suddenly rolled his eyes. He pulled out a dagger in disgust and stabbed Yun Hailon's abdomen. It was not until Yun Hailon screamed in pain that Yun Jin came back to her senses. Brother Nyo twisted the knife in Yun Hailon's abdomen a few times and then pushed Yun Hailon to the ground. Damn it! Yun Jin's eyes turned fierce and her pupils suddenly changed color. She was so worried about Yun Zhu that she forgot about Yun Hailon. She did not expect Brother Nyo to really stab Yun Hailon. When Yun Zhu saw this scene and recalled the past in his mind, he was in great pain. Yun Jin stood up from Yun Zhu's side. Her cruel eyes were filled with burning anger. She was really angry. Chapter 272. At first, Brother Nyo and the others didn't see Yun Jin as a threat at all. After all, in their eyes, how old was Yun Jin? No matter how powerful she was just a little girl. Where could she go? But the moment Yun Jin took out the butterfly knife, Brother Nyo and the others' eyelids twitched. F***, are you for real? The little beauty is hiding a weapon on her? Brother Nyo screamed. But even if you have a weapon on you, do you think you can beat us? Brother Nyo looked at Yun Jin with contempt as she walked towards them with a butterfly knife. Just as he sneered, Yun Jin had already made her move. The butterfly knife in her hand moved nimbly between her fingers and then stabbed into Brother Nyo's abdomen at a strange angle. Brother Nyo's eyes widened. He didn't even have the chance to react before he was stabbed in the abdomen by this seemingly harmless girl in front of him. You. Brother Nyo shouted desperately. You're not human. You're not human. How is it possible for a little girl to be able to display such quick skills? But Brother Nyo couldn't finish his words. The moment Yun Jin withdrew the knife, Brother Nyo fainted completely. With a bang, he fell to the ground and stopped breathing in the next second. Dead. Dead. Brother Nyo is dead. Seeing that Brother Nyo was killed by Yun Jin with such terrifying skills, Brother Nyo's group of brothers became restless. Then they all ran away faster than anyone else. No one cared about Brother Nyo's life or death. This little girl could kill. She could kill. Seeing this group of people run away, Yun Jin didn't chase after them. After all, The person who stabbed Yun Hailon was Brother Nyo. And now, Brother Nyo was dead. Yun Jin walked over to check on Yun Hailon, who was stabbed on the ground by Brother Nyo. She touched Yun Hailon's nose with her finger and calmed down. Fortunately, Yun Hailon wasn't dead. Then Yun Jin pressed around Yun Hailon's wound and found that the wound wasn't deep. But if it dragged on for a long time, even if the wound wasn't deep, the person would bleed to death. The equipment here wasn't complete. She could help Yun Hailon remove the knife, but without the proper equipment, the wound could easily get infected. Therefore, Yun Jin took out the hemostatic medicine that she had bought after her rebirth and used it to stop Yun Hailon's bleeding. Then, Yun Jin ran out to stop a car. She was unfamiliar with this place and didn't even know where the nearest hospital was. Furthermore, Yun Hailon's wound wasn't suitable for her to carry her to the hospital. Fortunately, Yun Jin quickly stopped a kind-hearted Audi sports car at the entrance. The driver was a middle-aged man. When he heard that someone was injured, he hurriedly helped Yun Jin carry Yun Hailon into the car and send her to the hospital. Yun Jin held Yunju's hand and went to the nearest town hospital together. Yunju did not say a word along the way, but his dull eyes had become much clearer. Yun Jin didn't stop until Yun Hailon was sent to the hospital's operating room. She knew that with Yun Hailon's current injury, the hospital's medical skills could save her. It was the first time that the middle-aged man had seen a girl like Yun Jin who could remain calm in such a terrible situation. So he stayed with her until Yun Hailon's life was no longer in danger. Yun Jin thanked him and personally saw him off. Yun Hailon hadn't woken up after the operation, but she had been moved to the ward. After finishing the formalities, Yun Jin took Yunju's little hand and walked to the ward. Sister. Yunju, who had been silent all this time, suddenly called out. At this moment, walking in the deserted corridor of the hospital, Yun Jin's hand holding Yunju's hand suddenly paused. Yunju's next words almost made her, who had always been stubborn, cry. You're my sister, right? I know you're my sister. Chapter 273. Yunju's rosy cheeks were adorable. There was a hint of maturity in his tender face. He looked very much like Qing Ji, but it was not difficult to tell that he was a young boy with regular features. When he grew up, he would definitely be a charming man. They were blood relatives in their previous lives. Even though Yun Jin and Yunju had changed their bodies, they could still feel each other's feelings. Yun Jin smiled. A teardrop formed in her eyes. It swirled but did not fall in the end. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just squatted down and hugged Yunju. She pressed her chin against Yunju's shoulder and nodded gently. Yunju raised his head. He reached out his little hand to grab the corner of Yun Jin's clothes. There was a faint smile on his little face. Sister, yes. Yun Jin stroked Yunju's hair. All the regret and pain seemed to disappear at this moment. At this moment, the feeling of regaining what she had lost was indescribable by Yun Jin. Her younger brother's death had always been a knot in her heart. Now that her younger brother had been reborn like her shackled heart was also freed. However, she still wanted to take revenge for what happened in her previous life. Her younger brother did not die. This was a favor from God. However, the pain that her younger brother had suffered was real. Yun Jin swore that if she had the chance in the future, she would let the Inferno Ring suffer the consequences of angering her. Yun Hailon's injury was not serious in Yun Jin's mind. Perhaps because of her experience in her previous life, Yun Jin thought that as long as it was not fatal, it was not a serious injury. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, Yun Hailon had already been seriously injured. Yun Hailon had been stabbed in the abdomen. The wound was blurry. She had to lie in bed for half a year to recover slowly. In short, she had to recuperate slowly to recover to her previous state. Yun Jin sent Yun Hailon abroad to recuperate. She also told Yun Hailon that she would take good care of Yunju. At first, Yun Hailon was too embarrassed to agree. After all, Yun Jin had paid for her treatment after the accident. She didn't have the face to ask Yun Jin to help her take care of the child. However, after Yunju expressed her willingness to follow Yun Jin, Yun Hailon relented. Before Yin Hailan was sent abroad to recuperate, she thanked Yun Jian with tears in her eyes and told Yun Zhu to listen to Yun Jian. Yun Jian contacted the best hospital overseas. By the time she sent Yun Hailan over, it was already the afternoon of the next day. The next day, Yun Jian held Yun Zhu's hand and showed her most beautiful smile. They stood under the sun and waited for Chu Ning and the others who had just come down from Weiwu Mountain. Chu Ning and the others arrived at the top of the mountain and stayed there for a night before coming down. They had talked about all this in their phone calls. In the end, Yun Jian did not see Chun Yin and the rest of them again. When Chu Ning and the others boarded the train back to Longmen City with Yun Jian, Chu Xiangnan even teased Yun Jian with a chuckle. "Oh, I didn't know that you, Yun Jian, have the ability to kidnap someone's little brother. So, you're planning to do this by not going up the mountain with us." As he spoke, Chu Xiangnan glanced at Yun Zhu. Yun Zhu shrunk toward Yun Jian shyly. "No one will think you're a mute if you don't speak." Chu Ning added to Chu Xiangnan with a grin. "Or maybe you want me to turn you into a mute." Yun Jian swung the butterfly knife in her hand with a grin. Her smile was beautiful and innocent. "No, no, no. Forget it." Chu Xiangnan waved his hand immediately. The group was overjoyed. Even Jiang Weiwei, who had always disliked interacting with others, was slowly becoming a part of the group. Jiang Weiwei's change had only begun recently. The train returned to Longmen City at night. After Yun Jian parted with the group, she held Xiao Yunju's hand all the way home. Holding Xiao Yunju's hand, Yun Jian had just stepped into the villa when she saw the tall figure sitting on the sofa. It was Ce. She was stunned, but still held Xiao Yunju's hand as they entered the house. "Jiejie, are we staying here from now on?" Xiao Yunju turned to ask Yun Jian when Ce looked over. "Yeah, Jiejie will introduce Jiejie's family to you." Yun Jian could not help caressing her younger brother's head with a wide smile. Ce was already striding over with her long legs. He frowned slightly. Since Yun Jian came in with the little guy, she had not spared a glance at her. "Oh." Xiao Yunju pressed his lips together, his head bobbing up and down. He then looked around and asked Yun Jian, "Jiejie, can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course." "No." After Xiao Yunju asked, two voices sounded at the same time. Chapter 274. Yun Jian and Yunju were both stunned by Ce's words. Yun Jian, in particular, did not understand the meaning behind Ce's words. Yunju, on the other hand, shook his adorable little head from side to side. An 8-year-old child naturally did not understand that he had asked his older sister a question. Why was his older brother, who was so handsome, not allowing him to sleep with his older sister when his older sister had already agreed to it? Before either of them realized what was going on, Ce's tall and broad figure appeared in front of Yun Jian. He raised his good-looking eyebrows slightly and turned to look at Xiao Yunju. His short hair tilted to the side as he repeated his words in a mellow and pleasant voice. "You're not allowed to sleep with her." Yunju's arrival had been unexpected. Moreover, he had not helped Yunju clean up a clean room. However, Yunju wanted to sleep in the same room as Yun Jian. Even though Yunju was just a little kid, he would not allow it. Xiao Yunju frowned when he heard Ce's words. He looked at Ce in confusion and asked, "Big brother, why can't I sleep with my older sister?" The corners of Ce's lips quirked up, his handsome lips exuding a certain charm. He paused for a moment before he came up with a random excuse. "Because you're a boy." After that, he added, "You'll sleep in my room tonight." With that, Ce turned and went upstairs. No matter how much he explained, he didn't. "Ridiculous," Yun Jian said softly as she watched Ce go upstairs. She then reached out to rub her younger brother's head. "Little Zhu, you can sleep with big brother tonight." Yun Jian looked at her younger brother with a bright smile. "Okay." Yunju was a very obedient child. He quickly realized that he could not sleep in the same room as his older sister. However, big brother seemed very fierce just now. Forget it. He should listen to his sister. In the evening, when Qin Yiru and others went home, Yun Jian introduced Yunju's background to Qin Yiru. Of course, she would not tell Qin Yiru that Yunju was her younger brother in her previous life. She just made up a story, but it was close to the reality. She said that Yoonju's mother was seriously injured and hospitalized. She felt sorry for Yoonju, so she brought her home to raise her. Chin Yiru was kind-hearted, and since she started working at New Cruise, she had been saving more and more money. He could afford to raise another child. Moreover, Yoonju was very likable. Chin Yiru soon fell in love with Xiao Yoonju. He even kept calling her Xiao Zhu, Xiao Zhu. Yoonjin handled the school transfer procedures for Yoonju. The 8-year-old Yoonju was already in primary 1. Now that he came back to Longmen City with her, Yoonjin quickly got someone to handle the school transfer procedures and enrolled him in school, as usual. At the same time, Yoonjin went back to her normal school life. Since Zhang Xiaofeng and the others knew that Yoonjin was the director of New Cruise, they had been coming to her every day. Of course, Yoonjin did not forget to get Zhang Xiaofeng to train his body every day. In the blink of an eye, it had been almost 3 months since her rebirth. This Friday, Yoonjin went to Yoon Yi's school to look for Yoon Yi after school. She could not find her in the classroom. He went to the music classroom. It's New Year's Day soon. Your brother participated in a program during the New Year's Day performance this year. He's busy rehearsing in the music classroom now. A boy in the class who could tell that Yoonjin was Yoon Yi's younger sister pointed the way for Yoonjin out of kindness. Chapter 275. The D Senior High School that Yoon Yi studied in was an elite school, but not everyone could enroll in it. And for such a public school with such a foundation, its education level was also very high. Here, not only could students enjoy the guidance of first-level education teachers, they could even choose their own interests and hobbies. These hobbies included a variety of musical instruments. Every student who studied here could choose a musical instrument they liked to practice. At the same time, there were teachers who specialized in musical instruments who taught the students how to play. Just as Yoonjin approached the music classroom, she heard the sounds of various musical instruments being played. The sound of all the instruments mixed together was like a cacophony of noise, extremely unpleasant to the ears. Now that she was closer, she could even see the young man standing in front of the classroom with his slender fingers strumming the guitar. He was as quiet and gentle as a clear spring. Her brother, Yoon Yi, was a guitar student. He was very good at it. Yoon Yi had come into contact with the guitar before he studied in this school. Yoon Yi came into contact with the guitar because of his junior high school teacher. Yoon Yi's junior high school teacher was a beautiful woman who loved to play the guitar. When Yoon Yi became obsessed with the guitar, his junior high school teacher knew that Yoon Yi liked it but could not afford a guitar to practice due to her family's financial situation, so she gave her guitar to Yoon Yi. Yoon Yi had been teaching himself to play the guitar and had not stopped since. Xiao Jian. Yoon Yi noticed Yoonjin quickly. He kept his guitar and placed it aside before going to Yoonjin. Go. Yoonjin called out with squinted eyes and commented to Yoon, "You played well." It was indeed well done. Yoon Yi chuckled in embarrassment and led Yoonjin into the music classroom. The music classroom was currently filled with the sound of various musical instruments being practiced diligently. It was very noisy. Yoon Yi, who's this cute little girl? Just as Yoonjin was looking around, an unfriendly voice rang out. A pretty girl in a pretty pink dress with regular features stood in front of Yoonjin, looking at her maliciously with a hint of threat in her tone. At first glance, Yoonjin did not feel anything special about the girl. "She's my younger sister, Yoonjin." Yoon Yi answered with a smile and introduced the girl to Yoonjin. "She's Chun Yubing, the main pianist for our New Year's Day performance." Yoon Yi gave a simple introduction. Yoonjin, on the other hand, noticed it. The girl named Chun Yubing kept glancing at Yoon Yi. The adoration in her eyes was clearly visible. Yoonjin also realized that Chun Yubing had a lot of opinions about her at first, but when Yoon Yi said that she was his younger sister, Chun Yubing's expression changed again. "Wow, you're Yoon Yi's younger sister." Chun Yubing shouted and glanced at Yoon Yi. Then she walked over and pulled Yoonjin to the only piano in the music classroom, as if she was an old friend. At the same time, Chun Yubing was still mumbling to herself. as if she was afraid that others would not know how good she was. "Little girl, is this your first time here? Hee, do you want to learn how to play the piano? Although I'm not very good now. I'm only at the 9th grade of piano, but I can teach you how to play." Chapter 276. Although Yun Jian did not like Chun Yubing, she still followed her. She could feel that her brother only treated Chun Yubing as a classmate, but she could not deny the pride and arrogance in Chun Yubing's tone when she spoke to her. She was trying to curry favor with Yun Jian. The reason was simple. Yun, he was her brother. "Come, sit here." Chun Yubing gestured for Yun Jian to sit on the stool in front of the only grand piano in the music room. Chun Yubing then stood aside and pressed a few keys on the piano. She lifted her thumb to press one of the keys and introduced it to Yun Jian. "Little girl, this key is due." As she spoke, Chun Yubing pressed a few more buttons and explained them to Yun Jian one by one. Yun Jian acted like she did not understand anything and nodded with a slight smile. Yun, he was standing beside her. Yun, he only smiled. His cheerful face was refreshing. It was undeniable that Yun, he was very handsome. He was the kind of guy who looked clean. It was no wonder that Chun Yubing would raise her head to look at Yun, he from time to time. The adoration in her eyes was obvious, especially when Yun, he looked at his sister, sitting in front of the piano with a smile on her pretty face and her red lips curled up. He felt comforted. After all, in Yun Yi's heart, Qin Yuru had worked hard to raise the two of them until now. He felt that he could live a hard life, but he did not want his mother to suffer. Even more so, he did not want his sister to live at the bottom of society. In this era, not everyone could afford to learn the piano. Yun, he had a huge wish in his heart. He hoped that he could work hard to get into a university and earn money to support his family after he graduated. Not only did he want to support his mother, but he also wanted his sister to live a good life. A good life where she could learn whatever she wanted. Of course, Yun Yi did not know that Yun Jian was the chairman of New Cruise. Chun Yubing stood aside. She could feel that Yun Yi had been watching her teach Yun Jian how to play the piano. Chun Yubing's heart was pounding. At the same time, Chun Yubing had an idea. She wanted to show off in front of Yun Yi. "Little girl, can you stand up for a while? I'll play a song for you. Then I'll teach you." Chun Yubing tried her best to soften her voice as she spoke to Yun Jian. Yun Jian smirked and stood up. She wanted to see what tricks Chun Yubing was up to. When Chun Yubing caught Yun Yi watching from the corner of her eye, she took over the latter's spot eagerly. Placing both hands on the piano, she played a smooth and coherent tune. This was the most fluent and coherent piece she had ever played. As the gentle music played, the surrounding students who were busy practicing their New Year's Day performances could not help but stop to listen to Chun Yubing's performance. They could not help but exclaim. Chun Yubing glanced at the praises from the corner of her eyes. She was immensely pleased with herself, but there was also a trace of pride. She was so outstanding. How could Yun Yi not like her? The song ended. Chun Yubing gave up her seat and let Yun Jian sit in front of the piano again. She then spoke to Yun Jian gently. "Little girl, you could try to learn the song I played just now." There was an indescribable sense of pride in her words. Yun Jian nodded gently. She paused for a moment before her fair and slender fingers touched the piano. Then, her hands suddenly became nimble. A song that everyone was familiar with flowed out from the piano under Yun Jian's fingers. It was indescribably beautiful. Wasn't this the song Chun Yubing played just now? Yun Yi's sister knew how to play too. Chapter 277. You know how to play this song? Just as everyone was flabbergasted and even Yun Yi widened her eyes, Chun Yubing's astonished voice rang with a hint of surprise and embarrassment. She knew how to play. Yun Yi's younger sister knew how to play the piano. Chun Yubing's current shock and awkwardness were indescribable. She had been showing off in front of Yun Jian just now, but the latter had been mocking her all along. She did not tell her. Yun Jian did not tell her that she knew how to play the piano. Was he trying to embarrass her? For a moment, Chun Yubing's face gradually darkened. "Yeah, Xiao Jian, you know how to play the piano?" In contrast to Chun Yubing's shock, Yun Yi was much calmer, but there was still a lot of shock and astonishment in that calmness. Go. I learned this from Xiao Yin when I was in Xinjiang town. Yun Jian smiled. She was not lying. The original owner of the body had indeed gone to Lu Fian's house to learn piano from her for a while when she was in Xinjiang town. It was because Lu Fian came from a well-to-do family. Her parents were both teachers, and she had learned piano from teacher. The original owner of the body had also learned from Lu Fian for a period of time, but it was not very professional. Yun Jian smiled and said, "But it's my first time hearing this song. You played it so well the first time you heard it." When everyone heard this, they were once again shocked. Chen Yubing, on the other hand, froze on the spot like she had been slapped hard. Yun Jian could play it so well after listening to it once. What was she then? She had almost scraped the skin off her hands to practice this song. Chen Yubing's face paled. Yun Yi smiled in relief and placed his long fingers on Yun Jian's head to rub it gently. I see. He still remembered that Lu Fian was his younger sister's best friend. Amen. Yun Jian nodded with a smile. Right, go. Are you coming home today? Yun Jian asked with a blink and changed the topic quickly. Chen Yubing was left out in the cold. Amen, I am. Yun thought about it and nodded. For the sake of a good learning environment, Yun had not been home for a few weeks. In spite of it, he was aware of the addition of Yun Zhu to the family and expressed his warm welcome. Let's go to a restaurant today. Mom doesn't work overtime today. Treat it as a welcome party for Xiao Zhu, Yun Jian said with a smile. Sure. Yun nodded and went to pack his things. Xiao Jian, go. To go back with you, to go home. From beginning to end, Yun did not spare Chen Yubing's second glance. On the other hand, Yun Jian and Yun were already out of the school gate. As they made their way to the main road, they saw someone coming toward them. The person had short hair and wore a short-sleeved t-shirt. He was drenched in sweat and looked like he had just come back from jogging. It was none other than Su Haokol, who had just come back from jogging. As the son of a mafia boss, Su Haokol had always had the habit of exercising. When Su Haokol saw Yun Jian, he told Yun with a smile, your sister is here to pick you up from school. I'm so envious that you have such a great sister. Su Haokol even greeted Yun Jian as he spoke. Chapter 278. Yun Jian did not feel that Yun Yi's invitation was inappropriate. After all, Su Haokol was Yun Yi's best friend. Su Haokol had helped Yun Yi a lot when her family was poor. Yun Jian followed suit and said, Yeah, let's go together. The more the merrier. Su Haokol grinned and said, It's rare for little sister Yun Yi to invite me to a restaurant. If I don't go, I'll be disrespectful. Ha! It's a deal. Let's meet at the usual place at 6 o'clock tonight, Yun Yi said with a smile. Okay. Su Haokol nodded with a smile. Then, Yun Yi and Su Haokol said goodbye for the time being. Yun Yi and Yun Jian went home at the same time. Qin Yiru had wanted to hold a welcome party for a long time. She even invited Dong Ruan and Ce. Of course, on the surface, it was to hold a welcome party for Yun Zhu. At the same time, it was also to thank Dong Ruan for taking her in during her most difficult time. As for the welcome party, it was not a grand ceremony. In fact, it was just a gathering of a group of people. Everyone gathered together for a meal and a chat. It was that simple. When Yun Jian got home, Qin Yiru had already prepared everything. Qin Yiru even specially bought a new set of clothes for Xiao Yunzhu, which added a lot of handsomeness to Yun Zhu's small face. Sister, brother. When Xiao Yunzhu saw Yun Jian and Yun Yi, he could not help but run over with his short legs and happily twirl in front of Yun Yi and Yun Jian. Yun Jian squatted down and pinched Xiao Yunzhu's tender and smooth skin as she asked, Little Zhu, have you been obedient in school recently? Little Zhu has been very obedient. The teacher even praised Little Zhu today. Xiao Yunzhu puffed out his chest and showed his masculinity. Then, Xiao Yunzhu suddenly remembered something. He reached into his trouser pocket and finally found something. It was a pack of green arrow chewing gum. Sister, brother Ce came to school to pick Little Zhu up today. Because little Zhu was praised by the teacher, Brother C even bought little Zhu bubble gum. It's really delicious. Little Zhu even left 2 pieces for you and brother. As he spoke, Xiao Yunju reached out and took out the remaining 2 pieces of chewing gum from the pack and stuffed them into Yun Jian and Yun Yi's hands. Then, Xiao Yunju looked at Yun Jian and Yun Yi with his pink and tender face. When she heard Xiao Yunju call C.E. Brother C.E., Yun Jian's mouth twitched. However, when she looked at the little guy in front of her who was bought over by C.E. with a pack of chewing gum, she smiled helplessly. Then, under Xiao Yunju's expectant gaze, she tore open the pack of chewing gum and chewed it. Yun Yi did the same. However, when Yun Jian chewed the chewing gum, she saw C.E. in a black casual outfit appear at the top of the stairs. He had both hands in his trouser pockets. His handsome face revealed a trace of laziness as he strode down the stairs with his long and slender legs. Brother C.E. At this moment, the little guy who was standing in front of Yun Jian and watching her and Yun Yi chewing gum suddenly shouted excitedly. In the next second, Xiao Yunju ran over to C.E. at the speed of a wisp of smoke and circled around him. C.E. habitually reached out his fair and slender fingers and rubbed Xiao Yunju's hair. His beautiful starry eyes looked at Yun Jian with an irresistible tenderness. Chapter 279. Hearing C.E.'s sudden greeting, Yun Jian's red lips that were chewing gum paused, and she almost swallowed it. It's from Xiao Zhu. Of course it's delicious, Yun Jian said with a smile as she looked at Xiao Yunju, who was surrounding C.E. from afar. Hee, Jie. This is C.E. Gige's reward for Xiao Zhu. Xiao Yunju popped out from C.E.'s side and looked at Yun Jian with a grin. His nimble behavior was as adorable as it could get. Yun Jian smiled and looked at C.E. gratefully. She owed her younger brother in her past life. She was grateful from the bottom of her heart that C.E. could treat him so well and make Xiao Zhu so happy. Are you all ready? It was then that Qin Yiru hooked her arm around Dong Ruan's, and both of them walked down the stairs intimately. Qin Yiru, who had just gone upstairs for a while, had put on a new fur coat. It was a brand new one that Dong Ruan had chosen for her. It accentuated her complexion when she wore it. Now that Qin Yiru had saved some money, other than her daily expenses, Qin Yiru no longer had to wear the old clothes that she had mended. Since she was happy, she steeled her heart and bought a fur coat as well. Of course, Qin Yiru had also bought clothes for Yun Jian and Yuni before that. We can go now. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, her delicate and pretty face looking even more alluring. She went over to hold Xiao Yunju's hand and walked out of the house with Qin Yiru and the rest. The group of people walked over. Qin Yiru planned to treat everyone to a good meal this time, so she chose a 4-star hotel in Longmen City, Qinyan Hotel. She only invited Dong Ruan and her family. Although this hotel's expenses were relatively high, she could still afford a meal if she gritted her teeth and took out a few months' worth of her salary. This Qinyan Hotel was the old place that Yun Yi and Su Haokol had mentioned. Back then, when Su Haokol was being hunted down by a sniper, Yun Jian managed to kill the sniper instead. When they arrived at the entrance of Qinyan Hotel, they saw that Su Haokol was already standing there waiting for them. When Su Haokol saw Qin Yiru and Dong Ruan, she smiled and greeted them. Hello, aunties. Su Haokol had met Qin Yiru before. After all, he was Yun Yi's best friend, and they used to be friends. Oh, it's Xiaozha. Long time no see. Qin Yiru greeted him cheerfully as well. Su Haokol went up to Yun Yi after greeting her. He even turned to greet Yun Jian with a teasing tone. Hi. Yuni Mimi, we meet again. Is it inconvenient for us to sit down and chat later? Just as he finished his flirting, Su Haokol felt the air around them turn colder. He turned to look and saw the handsome man standing beside Yun Jian looking at him with a penetrating gaze. That gaze seemed to want to kill him. Su Haokol could not help shuddering. I think I'll sit with you later. Su Haokol rubbed his nose and smiled awkwardly. Yun Jian pursed her lips. She watched as Qin Yiru and Dong Ruan walked into the hotel arm in arm. Yun, Yi, and Su Haokol followed them in. She stood in the same spot and held Xiao Yunju's hand. Suddenly, she bent down and whispered into Xiao Yunju's ear, "Xiao Zhu, kick him." See, he was standing beside Xiao Yunju. At this moment, Xiao Yunju was sandwiched between the two of them. When Xiao Yunju heard Yun Jian's words, he suddenly raised his beautiful eyes and asked Yun Jian loudly and ignorantly, "Sister, why do you want me to kick Si Gij?" Chapter 280. Yun Jian didn't think that Xiao Yunju would actually say what she secretly said to him out loud. She immediately covered Xiao Yunju's mouth and pulled Xiao Yunju towards the hotel. "No, no, Xiao Zhu, you heard wrong," Yun Jian said as she stroked her brother's short hair. Looking at the blush that flashed across Yun Jian's rosy cheeks, he pressed his lips together and flashed a charming smile before following Yun Jian into the hotel in large strides. He followed Yun Jian's footsteps. Qin Yuru had already reserved a table. After they sat down, the dishes were served. Naturally, they didn't sit in a private room. They sat in the large living room on the first floor. The private room was much more expensive than the large living room. After all, Clear Rhythm Hotel was a 4-star hotel. The only place Qin Yuru could afford was the large living room on the first floor. The dishes were served one after another. Yun Jian picked up a large drumstick for Xiao Yunju. Xiao Yunju was scarily skinny. He probably didn't have many good meals because he lived with Yun Hailon for the past 6 months. After all, Yun Hailon's family was even worse off than Yun Jian's when she had just been reborn. "Xiao Zhu, eat more." Yun Jian placed a large piece of drumstick into Xiao Yunju's bowl. Who knew that the moment the drumstick was placed in Xiao Yunju's bowl, Xiao Yunju would shake his little head. He used his chopsticks to pick up the drumstick and placed it in Si's bowl. At the same time, Xiao Yunju pouted and said with his pink lips, "Xiao Zhu doesn't like drumsticks. I want to give them to Si Gij." Yun Jian had a huge question mark in her heart. When did Xiao Zhu become so clingy to Si? How could she, as his older sister, not know? "Xiao Zhu, if you don't like drumsticks, don't put them in Si Gij's bowl. It's impolite," Yun Jian said as she stroked Yun Zhu's smooth short hair. Besides, she used her chopsticks to pick up the drumstick. See, he wouldn't eat it, right? However, just as Yun Jian finished lecturing Xiao Yunju, he picked up the drumstick from his bowl and gently swallowed it. Yun Jian swallowed and was speechless. But Si Gij said that if Xiao Zhu doesn't like it, I should give it to Si Gij because I can't waste food. Xiao Zhu blinked his eyes and looked at Yun Jian innocently. Yun Jian retorted at Yun Zhu's words. How dare he instigate Xiao Yunju like this? Yun Jian suddenly turned her head and glared at Si. She looked just like a wife complaining about her husband. Si pursed his lips and gave her a handsome smile. Seeing Si's handsome smile, Yun Jian's heart suddenly stopped. She quickly lowered her head and quickly swallowed the food in her bowl. As for Yun Jian and Si's actions, no one noticed them. Su Haokol was busy chatting with Yun Yi. Qin Yuru and Dong Ruan were also happily chatting. Only Xiao Yunju, who was sandwiched between Yun Jian and Si, raised his head and looked around. What were Big Sister and Si Gij doing? "Oh, you guys are also here for dinner? What a coincidence." At this moment, a familiar female voice called out from behind Yun Jian. Yun Jian turned her head and saw Chun Yubing, who had changed into a glazed dress and braided her hair. She smiled and greeted them as she walked over. "It's her?" Yun Jian frowned. Chun Yubing walked over and sized up Yun Yi. Then, she used a familiar voice to speak to Qin Yuru. Chapter 281. In fact, it was not a coincidence. Qin Yubing had overheard the conversation between Yun Jian and Yun Yi in the music room. In addition, one of Qin Yubing's friends overheard Yun Yi and Su Haokol saying, "See you at the usual place at the school gate." Weren't these the usual places that Yun Yi and Su Haokol frequented? Qin Yubing had always been secretly in love with Yun Yi. How could she not know? Thus, she came here. Of course, she deliberately redressed herself before coming here, because it was very likely that she would meet Yunyi's mother today. However, it turned out that she really did meet Yunyi's mother, Qin Yiru. Thus, she quickly came over to greet her. "Oh, so you're Yunyi's classmate. Hello, hello." Qin Yiru quickly stood up and greeted Chen Yubing when she heard that Chen Yubing was Yunyi's classmate. Qin Yiru had always been friendly to her son and daughter's friends. This was normal. At this time, Yun Yi, who was sitting at the side, frowned silently. "By the way, classmate, have you eaten? Do you want to sit down and have dinner with us?" Qin Yiru did not find anything wrong. Instead, she asked Chen Yubing very kindly. "This, Auntie, won't it be embarrassing?" Chen Yubing looked around and then showed an embarrassed expression. However, she still sat down at a seat not far from Yunyi. In fact, Qin Yiru did not really intend to let Chen Yubing sit down. She was just being polite. However, when she saw that Chen Yubing really sat down, Qin Yiru could only go along with it. Qin Yiru smiled and said politely, No, since you were Yi's classmate, you could be more casual." Yun Jian did not expect Chen Yubing to be so shameless. She turned her head and saw her brother frowning. His frown was so tight that it could kill a fly. Then, with Chen Yubing's self-conscious participation, the atmosphere became less cheerful. Yun Jian could even feel Chen Yubing's eyes darting towards Si's face from time to time after she sat down. Yun Jian immediately felt that this feeling was very unpleasant. In fact, Yun Jian's intuition was right. It was only after Chen Yubing sat down that she saw Si. His perfect face was like a work of art carved by God. Anyone who sat beside him would pale in comparison. In spite of it, Chen Yubing only took a few more glances at him. She knew herself well enough to know that a man like that would never belong to her, so she shifted her attention back to Yunyi. Even after Chen Yubing joined in, everyone picked up their bowls and ate their own food, not saying a word. The atmosphere was even more subtle. After dinner, Chen Yubing shamelessly followed them all the way out of Qingyun Hotel. Chen Yubing even trailed behind Qin Yiru, like she was trying to curry favor with Qin Yiru. She could not help finding topics to flatter the latter. It's rare for us to get together. Why don't we go shopping together? I saw that the newly opened Pacific department store had a lot of new clothes that will fit you perfectly. Why don't we go take a look? However, Chen Yubing thought in her heart, which woman doesn't like to be beautiful? She first took care of Yun Yi's mother. She was not afraid that Yun Yi would not be moved by her. Well, Qin Yiru frowned and glanced at Chen Yubing awkwardly. Qin Yiru had indeed heard about the newly opened department store in Longmen City called Pacific Department Store. Women love to be beautiful, and Qin Yiru was no exception. However, Chen Yubing had taken this into account, but not the other one. The rent at Pacific Department Store was expensive, causing the merchants to raise their prices several times. Even the cheapest adult clothes cost a few hundred to 1,000 each. The quality and design of the clothes were naturally excellent. However, treating everyone to a meal today had cost Qin Yiru so much, and now Chen Yubing was suggesting to pick out such an expensive piece of clothing for her. How could she afford to go? My mom has something on tonight. She can't go. Just as Qin Yiru was frowning, Yun Jian spoke to Chen Yubing without much anger in her tone. Chapter 282. Yes. Miss Chen Yubing, I'm sorry, we have something on tonight. I'm afraid we can't go shopping with you. Qin Yiru was smart enough to know that Yun Jian was helping her out, so she spoke up. Chen Yubing, you should go. It's time to go home and practice your zither. Yun Yi, who had been silent, could not help telling Chen Yubing. His words carried a strong sense of urgency and impatience. Chen Yubing, who was instantly isolated, bit her lip and left under Yun Yi's impatient gaze, leaving behind a reluctant statement. Then I'll go first. See you in school, Senior Yun Yi. Chen Yubing's tone sounded like she was unwilling to let go. Yun Jian's brows furrowed tightly. She would never let a woman like her get close to her brother again. Due to Chen Yubing's appearance, the group's cheerful mood was mostly dampened, but Qin Yiru and Dong Ruan were still smiling along the way. Yun Jian did not know that Chen Yubing was unwilling to give up. Of course, it was her unwillingness that led to Chen Yubing's tragic end. Of course, this was a story for another time. See, he left Longmen City temporarily, due to some matters. Yun Jian did not see him for the next few days. Yun Jian went back to her usual life as well. New Cruise was on the right track now. Although the sales volume was not as shocking as when the auto show was first held, the net profit of tens of millions a month was stable. Zhang Jifan and his buddies were overjoyed. They had never thought that their decision to start a business with Yun Jian back then would be so much more profitable than when they were loan sharks. More importantly, their current jobs were honorable. This was especially true for Zhang Jifan. Whenever he walked out into the crowd, people would point at him and exclaim, "Look, that's the big boss of New Cruise." Yun Jian's monthly income was in the millions and even tens of millions. It was her privilege as the director of New Cruise. At this time, there were only a few days left before the New Year's Day performance. It was only about a week away. The students who were rehearsing for the New Year's Day performance were all busy. Yun Jian, who did not sign up for the performance, seemed to be very free. Yun Jian's Dragon Gate No. 1 High School and Yun Yi's First High School jointly organized the New Year's cultural performance. As the former was the best junior high school in Longmen City, while the latter was the best senior high school in Longmen City, both schools had reached a consensus. Every year, during the New Year's Day performance, the two schools would each come up with 15 performances for a total of 30 performances. After that, all the students from the two schools would gather together to watch. Finally, they would evaluate which school's students performed better, and so on. Of course, this was also to increase the interest of the students. It was not yet time for the New Year's cultural performance, but the students were already restless. After school this Friday, Yun Jian, Zhang Xiaofeng, and Zhang Jifan went out with the crowd. Just as the four of them reached the school gate, Yun Jian was stopped by a tall and bashful boy whose cheeks were flushed. He looked rather shy. "Hey, Yun Jian," the boy called out to Yun Jian softly, but his voice was soon drowned out by the hustle and bustle of the crowd. In spite of it, Yun Jian still heard it with her sharp ears. She turned to see Lu Haoze standing on a high flight of stairs, calling out to her in a low mosquito-like voice. Chapter 283. When Yun Jian walked over, Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest followed. Zhang Xiaofeng, Chun Sini, and Ling Yichen had seen Lu Haoze before, so they were not unfamiliar with him. "You guys go ahead first." Yun Jian turned to look at Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest and reminded them. Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest would go to New Cruise to report to Zhang Jifan whenever they were not studying on the weekends. The three of them were determined to learn from Zhang Jifan. At the same time, they wanted to make a name for themselves in the business world. "We'll go ahead first then." Zhang Xiaofeng nodded at Yun Jian and left with Chun Sini and Ling Yichen. Yun Jian turned to look at Lu Haoze. She narrowed her eyes and said, "Let's find a quiet place to talk." Yun Jian and Lu Haoze found a quiet place and looked at each other. Lu Haoze's cheeks flushed as Yun Jian stared at him. He looked like an adorable little brother. He dared not look into Yun Jian's eyes. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at Yun Jian. "Our elder is back. I told him that you're looking for him, so he asked me to tell you when you're free to meet him." Lu Haoze said all this in one breath. At this time, his face was as red as an apple. "I'm free now." Yun Jian moved her red lips and smiled. Therefore, Lu Haoze brought Yun Jian to his house to meet his elder. Yun Jian followed Lu Haoze back to the school gate. They took bus route 11 from the school gate to the east station and then took the rural bus. It was a bumpy ride of about 1.5 hours before they arrived at Lu Haoze's house. Lu Haoze's house was located in a small town. It was quite far from Xinjiang town, almost one in the east and one in the west. Lu Haoze's family lived in a courtyard house. Lu Haoze's family wasn't the only one living in this courtyard house. Their direct family members, side branches, and even the family elders were all living here. The Lu family was an ancient family and could be considered a hidden family now. At the same time, all the relatives lived in the same house and had never been separated. When Yun Jian and Lu Haoze walked into the courtyard, an old lady sitting in the courtyard and enjoying the evening breeze saw them and shouted, "Xiaoze brought back a girl this time. That was incredible. She can't be Xiaoze's little girlfriend, right? She looks so beautiful." The old lady's nonsensical words made Lu Haoze's cheeks burn even hotter, and even his earlobes turned red. Lu Haoze hurriedly replied to the old lady, "Grandma, don't talk nonsense. This is my friend Yunjian. She's here to see the elders." "Oh, so that's how it is. I thought you were enlightened." The old lady came to a sudden realization. She smiled as she watched Lu Haoze lead Yunjian into the house. This was just my grandma talking nonsense. Please don't take offense," Lu Haoze said to Yunjian in a fluster. "It's fine." Yunjian narrowed her eyes and smiled. "Ha ha ha. Xiaoze, you brought her here so quickly." At that moment, a strong male voice was heard. An old man in his 60s or 70s walked in with a smile. "Elder," Lu Haoze called out when he saw the old man. Elder Lu waved his hand to signal for him to be quiet. Elder Lu then walked around Yunjian twice. He said to her, "So you're his disciple." "TSK, I didn't think that old man would accept a disciple." When Yunjian heard Elder Lu's tone, she instantly believed that he knew the old man who had taught her many skills in her previous life. She couldn't wait to ask Elder Lu, "You know him? Then do you know where he is now?" Elder Lu laughed heartily at first, but then he suddenly stopped laughing. His expression suddenly became serious. He did not say anything, but only spat out 2 words, "Yulong mainland." When Elder Lu spat out these 4 words, Yun Jian's eyelids twitched. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.